Edith Rigelhof. This was her name in this life. As she walked down the aisle towards a future she already knew was a death sentence. On paper, it was a perfect union of two noble houses. Edith, however, felt a knot of nerves, desperately telling herself there was no need to panic. But the air was thick with malice. She could feel the wedding guests' eyes on her, some filled with derision, others with outright hatred, and a few, disturbingly, with lust. Happiness? There was none to be found here, not in her heart, nor in the stiff posture of the groom beside her. The priest began his sermon, his voice echoing with words about all creation, worshipping the Almighty Creator. Edith almost pitied him, having to officiate such a hollow ceremony. He spoke of bringing man and woman together to form a joyous family, words that Edith knew were a cruel lie. Today, she was marrying the man who would come to loathe her, and eventually be the cause of her death. As the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Edith reflected that, like all tragedies in her life, her death had always come suddenly, unexpectedly. Her thoughts drifted to a previous life. A man, her brother, had cornered her, demanding everything she had. She'd asked, horrified, if he'd been gambling again. He just snarled, reminding her that she owed him her life. She'd cried out that his claim was from ages ago, that he had no idea how much money she'd already poured into his black hole of debt. He just scoffed at ages ago. Could he even pay her back? Her desperate question was met with his rising fury, his voice a venomous hiss. Then the stairs. That's right, the stairs. And on the other side of that fall, the tragic end to a tragic day. Now she blinked, touching an unfamiliar face in a mirror. A stranger stared back. Who was this person? A horrifying thought struck her. No way had she been reincarnated. It was a plot straight out of the romantic fantasy novels she used to read. Just then, a maid entered, addressing her as Miss Edith. The maid gently reminded her of the special day. Edith's mind reeled. Edith, this was a character from the novel she'd read just last night. Stop obsessing over me, brother. The novel's heroine was Rise Sinclair, the illegitimate daughter of a count, a young lady with the beauty of spring flowers. Rise's early life was one of torment due to her birth, until she caught the eye of the Rudwicks and became their ward. There, in the Rudwick estate, Rise met the two handsome Rudwick brothers, and so began the intense competition between the brothers for Rise's heart, the very obsession the book was titled after. Edith herself, however, had a very different role. In this story, Edith Rigelhof was cast as the simple, ignorant, greedy villain. She was the type to constantly scheme against Rise, perhaps even yelling for her servant Sophia to bring a needle for some nefarious plan, only for her efforts to be easily thwarted, paving the way for Rise's happiness. That kind of villain. The original Edith was so blinded by jealousy, willing to do almost anything to harm Rise, despite having a doting father and never wanting for money. The maid's voice pulled her back. "There you go, miss," she said, having finished with Edith's hair. The maid then informed her that his lordship, her father, was waiting. Edith, to the maid's surprise, responded with a polite "all right, thank you." The maid visibly started. A thank you from Lady Edith, that was new. Edith, now possessing Suna Chwe's soul, resolved that her only job was to fix Edith's mistakes. She remembered the original plot well enough. It shouldn't be too difficult. This was for the best. If she could pull this off, she might finally live a happy life with a loving family. With newfound determination, she burst through the doors to her father's study, calling out for him. "Good morning," she chirped, full of hope for this new life. But the sight that greeted her made her freeze. Her father, Count Rigelhof, gave her a chilling glare, a wine glass in hand, remarking icily that it was quite late to be calling it morning. All her hopes shattered. "Tusk, what a lazy girl," he muttered with disdain, turning away. He then barked at her to stop loitering by the door and close it. A wave of nausea hit Edith as a strange message flashed in her mind. Identity confirmed. Edith Rigelhof V13. 0. Memory synchronization commences now. The mental message continued, and a flood of the original Edith's experiences overwhelmed her. She saw Edith kneeling, begging her father for forgiveness, promising never to make another mistake, pleading for just one more chance as her brothers looked on. Suna Chwe, the soul within Edith, was aghast. What on earth? Edith was supposed to be the spoiled, arrogant villain, but the reality flooding her mind was nothing like that public image. It was a life of hidden terror and abuse. She saw Edith, locked in a dark room, desperately pleading to be let out. She heard her brother's cruel voice, telling a terrified Edith it was time for her to finally earn her keep in the house. Publicly, Edith was adorned in extravagant dresses and jewels, a walking billboard for the Rigelhof family's wealth and status. But at home, she was the outlet for everyone's anger. Even the servants would join in beating her. Bruised and broken, she was nothing more than the Rigelhof family's most expensive doll. Suna Chwe, reeling from these memories, wondered if she could truly change this fate. The maid beside her looked terrified, stammering, clearly sensing her mistress's distress. Her father's roar of Edith Rigelhof snapped her back to the present. He slammed his hand on the desk, demanding to know if she was even listening. Edith flinched. He warned her sternly not to make any mistakes today. The Rudwicks, he hissed, were just looking for an excuse to bring him down. Then came the instructions. She was not to forget her part in the negotiation. She must ask to bring 3 maids with her. They were needed for the next stage of his plan. Yes, father, Edith murmured, defeated. In this life and the last, why was she always stuck with such terrible families? She quickly reviewed what she knew. Duke Rudwick and Count Rigelhof had been rivals since childhood. Initially, both families were equally powerful. But Count Rudwick became a decorated war hero and was promoted to a duke. Count Rigelhof, however, festered with resentment, believing the title of duke had been stolen from him. That was why he was trying to marry Edith into the Rudwick family, as a spy to uncover information that could bring them down. Edith steeled herself. No crying. She was okay. She could do this, seize this opportunity, and make it hers. After all, she had plenty of experience fending for herself in challenging environments from her past life. She was sure she could find a way to survive, as long as she didn't repeat the original Edith's mistakes. Every villain in romantic fantasy novels faced tribulations at the beginning. She just needed to ensure she didn't do what the original Edith did. With that thought, she stepped out of the carriage. Arriving at the Rudwick Manor, Count Rigelhof sneered at its extravagance. Her brother chimed in, remarking that it was all hollow on the inside. Typical. A butler greeted them formally at the entrance. Welcome to the Rudwick Manor. He informed them that the Duke and Duchess were waiting for them inside. As the butler offered to show them the way, Count Rigelhof's demeanor shifted sickeningly, and he cooed, "Ah yes, come my lovely Edith." Edith mentally rolled her eyes. That was a quick 180, even for him. "Yes, father," she replied brightly, hiding her thoughts. She could handle this family for another week. More importantly, she needed to find her place in the Rudwick estate, the main stage of the novel. In the grand dining hall, the butler announced their arrival. Count Rigelhof, his heir, and the Lady Edith Rigelhof have arrived. Edith's breath caught. Wow, she couldn't believe it. She'd only ever imagined these main characters, and now she was meeting them in real life. Duchess Jocelyn Rudwick greeted them warmly, hoping their journey was comfortable, and mentioning dinner would be ready soon. Edith mentally identified her and Duke Axel Rudwick. And there was Cliff, the male lead. He was just as ridiculously handsome as she'd imagined. She felt like she could drown in those golden eyes. The blonde girl beside him, looking like a spring flower, had to be Rise. She was breathtaking, which meant the other man, the one with the intense gaze, was Killian, the man she was about to marry. Her heart thumped. Ah, this wasn't fair. Now she understood why the original Edith had been so obsessed with him. That sharp chin, the defined nose, his first impression was cold, yet somehow sensitive. And his physique, thick thighs, broad shoulders, a surprisingly slim waist. How could he even be human? As if sensing her scrutiny, Killian shot her a glare. Oops, Edith mentally chided herself. She needed to keep it together. He was never going to be hers anyway. She turned her attention to the lavish spread of food on the table. Much safer. I love being an aristocrat, she thought, savoring a bite. The meat melted on her tongue. As Count Rigelhof began to speak, Edith braced herself. Ah, they were starting. The Count, feigning concern, expressed how a parent could never feel at ease sending their daughter off. He hoped to send along a few maids who had served Edith since childhood, claiming they'd know best how to care for her. Duchess Jocelyn smiled sweetly, remarking that the maids of their manor were rather skilled themselves. A polite but clear refusal. Count Rigelhof, undeterred, posed a pointed question, asking if the Duchess hadn't brought her own maids when she married into the family. Edith knew they couldn't easily refuse such a request without appearing rude. She quickly reassured her father internally that it was fine. Then, turning to her father but speaking loudly enough for all to hear, Edith chirped, "Father, I'm really fine without them." Addressing the Duchess, she added with a sheepish smile that her father was just worried because he knew how clueless she could be. Count Rigelhof was internally roaring. What was wrong with this girl? Useless. Stop getting in the way. Edith sensed things were escalating. She leaned towards her father, whispering urgently if he hadn't seen Duke Rudwick's face. Later, in private, she explained to her father that his attempt was too obvious. The Rudwicks seemed to suspect something. What was the point of bringing maids if they were already suspected of being spies? Her father, unconvinced, questioned what she thought she could accomplish there on her own. Edith proposed her own strategy. She would enter the manor alone. As he said, she couldn't do anything by herself. If nothing happened initially, they'd let their guard down over time. She even mentioned Rise as part of her harmless facade. Her plan was clear. First, win their trust. Then, after some time, she could feign homesickness or make up some other excuse to bring over a few maids from home for a short while. "Just trust me, father," she pleaded. The week following that tense dinner was fraught with anxiety for everyone, but after everything was sorted out, she found herself standing at the altar. As the priest spoke of faithful children coming together to build a family, Edith felt a wave of relief. Now, she would never have to go back to that terrible household. The priest blessed their rings and the eternal vows they represented. The only thing left, Edith thought, was to exchange them. She glanced at Killian's annoyed expression and found it adorable. Killian met her gaze with a glare. Edith internally sighed. All right, Killian," she knew what he was thinking. "Let's just get this over with, shall we?" she thought, as the pillow with the rings was presented. As Killian reached for his ring, he fumbled, and it slipped from his grasp. "He doesn't even want to brush hands with me," Edith mused, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "How childish," she thought, gracefully stooping to pick up the fallen ring. Before he could react, Edith took Killian's hand and slid the ring onto his finger herself. He looked momentarily stunned, then annoyed. "HMPH. This doesn't change anything," she told herself. "It's not like I wanted your attention anyway." Just then, Rise, ever the innocent, patted them both gently, offering a sweet "good job, you two." A life free from abusive fathers or brothers. A life of prosperity, rest, and hobbies. That's all Edith hoped for in this reincarnation. Later, in her room, Edith sighed in relief as she shed the restrictive wedding dress. "I'm finally free from that dress. I can breathe again." The wedding dress had been cut so low she'd worried about a mishap, and her heels were tortuously high. Edith and her original tastes would be the death of her. Suna Chwe grumbled internally with a yawn. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Yes, come in," she called, brushing her hair. A maid hesitantly poked her head in, asking for Lady Edith. "Oh, Miss Rise," Edith said, recognizing the heroine. "What do you need?" Rise entered, explaining shyly that she just wanted to tell her something. "Oh, right." Edith remembered a similar scene from the novel happening right after the wedding. In the book, Rise came to apologize for Killian's rudeness. But Rise's apology only fanned the flames of the original Edith's humiliation, who then took her anger out on Rise instead of the frigid Killian. The original Edith had roared about Rise daring to wear a white dress to her wedding, declaring herself Killian's wife now. To be fair, Edith Suna didn't blame the original for being furious. Who wears white to another woman's wedding? But she wasn't the original Edith. She had no reason to get angry at the protagonist. Rise began, wanting to apologize for Killian's behavior earlier, hoping Edith wouldn't think too badly of him. She explained he might look cold, but he was actually a kind and caring person beneath that hard outer shell. Edith's heart melted. There was no way she could hate such a cute little girl. With her flowing blonde locks that sparkled like sunshine and azure blue eyes that twinkled like a lake at dawn, Rise wasn't just beautiful on the outside. Her heart was pure and kind. If she wanted to survive in a romantic fantasy plot like this one, Edith knew she'd better befriend Rise now. "Don't worry, Miss Rise," Edith said warmly. "I understand." Edith elaborated that Killian might be unhappy about being forced into an arranged marriage for their family's sake, but she didn't plan on holding that against him. Rise looked at her, deeply moved. "Lady Edith," she whispered. Edith mentally congratulated herself. If she could get on Rise's good side, her chances of survival in Rudwick's manor would skyrocket. Rise beamed, exclaiming that Lady Edith was such a mature and understanding person. Edith, playing along, gushed that she couldn't compare to Rise's kindness and complimented Rise's dress, saying she looked great, or perhaps the dress looked good because Rise was wearing it. Rise blushed, stammering that Edith was too kind. Just then a knock. A maid entered with towels. Edith, feigning surprise, said, "Oh my, I've kept you too long." Rise, flustered, apologized, saying Killian would be there soon and Edith must be tired. "Haha, thank you, Miss Rise." Edith smiled, waving. "You're so adorable I could just eat you up. Have a good night and see you tomorrow." As Rise left, Edith let a strap of her nightgown slip. "I guess that's the end of the wedding episode," she murmured, feeling the tension drain away. Now finally some alone time. She plopped down, ready to relax. "Ah, this is exactly what I needed." Edith sighed, sinking into a luxurious, rose-petal-strewn bath. Being a duchess-to-be meant maids would prepare baths for her from now on. So what if there was no internet? It was a small trade-off for not working and no household chores. She'd never have to worry about bills, annoying coworkers, or her gambling addict brother again. I'm going to fill my days with opera, picnics, tea parties, and balls. She sang to herself, tra-la-ling in delight. Suddenly, a deep voice jolted her. You're bathing without your groom. Killian stood there, his expression disdainful. What a heartless bride, he sneered. Killian, Edith gasped, clutching herself. According to the book, Killian shouldn't have been in the bridal suite tonight. Killian raised an eyebrow. Why was she so surprised? Who else, he drawled, would come into the bridal suite other than the bridegroom? Edith stammered. Oh, I just didn't think that you wanted to come tonight. How very astute of you, Killian replied dryly, stepping closer. Edith retorted that he wasn't exactly hiding it. He didn't even let her put the ring on his finger during the wedding. If she hadn't picked up on that, Killian leaned over the tub, his face close. What did you expect then? He whispered. Did you expect me to fawn over you like a lovesick fool? Ridiculous, he scoffed. Edith fumed internally. He was the one in the wrong here, but why did he have to be so handsome even when being a jerk? He was making her madder, and honestly, she didn't have the energy to argue. I'm just telling it as I saw it, she said calmly. I noticed that you didn't want to touch me, she continued, so I didn't expect you to come here tonight. So, will you sleep here tonight? Killian actually flinched at the question. He remained silent, then abruptly turned and left. Edith stared after him, completely bewildered. What was that about? Elsewhere, Rise found Killian brooding. Killian, she asked softly, weren't you going to Lady Edith's room? Killian sighed. He did go, he told her, but implied that Edith wasn't looking forward to tonight either. Rise looked confused, asking what he meant. He claimed Edith was dozing off in the bathtub by herself. Rise was puzzled. What? But I just saw her. Killian gently patted Rise's head. Rise, he said softly, you always see the very best in everybody. He then warned her about Count Rigelhof, saying she couldn't trust the words that came out of a Rigelhof's mouth, never knowing if they were complimenting or mocking. Rise's eyes widened. Ah, so then, was what Lady Edith said to me also. Killian's eyes narrowed. What did that woman say to you? Rise explained that Lady Edith had complimented her dress earlier. Now, she wondered if she shouldn't have taken her words at face value. Killian immediately jumped to a negative conclusion, asking if Edith had made a snide remark about a dress Rise didn't even choose herself. He scoffed internally at the idea of Rise feeling bad for Edith. She felt terrible. HMPH. Just look at her own wedding dress. He fumed silently that Edith had no right to complain about Rise's dress when her own wedding dress was so over the top and ridiculously ostentatious. Yes, it was. Vulgar. Rise gasped, shocked at his harshness. Vulgar, she's your wife, Killian, how could you say such a thing? Killian turned to the window, a melancholic look on his face. Is that all you have to say to me? He asked Rise quietly, as if disappointed. Rise, flustered, began, Killian I. He cut her off, his voice filled with pain. Rise, don't you know how I felt walking down the aisle today? Just then Cliff appeared. There you are, Killian. Rise, you too. What are you two doing here at this late hour? Oh, Cliff. Rise greeted him with a bright smile, while Killian remained shadowed and silent. The next morning, Edith woke up surprisingly early. Wow, she couldn't believe it, especially after that ordeal yesterday. She stretched, feeling a delightful sense of well-being. So this is what it's like to be, or at least healthy. She'd never been this healthy in her past life. All right, she had to look on the bright side. She had this healthy body, after all. Perhaps she could win over the Duke and Duchess. Even if Killian was completely focused on the protagonist, her in-laws might be different. The Redwicks were generous enough to take Rise in as a ward. With time, they might open up their hearts to her too, even if she didn't make the best first impression at dinner. All right, she decided with a sparkle in her eye. I'll visit them for breakfast. She mused that one of the best ways for a villain to survive, in a romance fantasy novel, was to win over the key supporting characters. If she was going to survive in the Redwick family, the opinions of the Duke and Duchess were the most important. After all, her ultimate goal was simple: to lead a quiet life of leisure in this manner, filled with delicious treats. In order to do that, she needed to earn their trust. Any in-laws would appreciate their new daughter-in-law dropping by to greet them the morning after the wedding. Then she paused. Oh wait, was that just a custom in Korea? She spotted the bell rope. Ah, this must be the kind she read about in books. So cool, right? With the help of her maid, she could transform into a demure daughter-in-law in no time. She pulled the rope. Ding ding. A maid appeared. You called, my lady. Edith smiled. Yes, please help me wash up and get dressed. Internally, Edith thought it felt so weird being called my lady. The maid, Anna, nodded, saying she would prepare her washing basin. So, Edith began, what did you say your name was? The maid replied, Anna, my lady. Yes, Anna. Edith gestured to a rack of opulent gowns. Are all the clothes I brought as revealing and flamboyant as these? Anna confirmed with a solemn yes, my lady. Edith groaned internally. She couldn't visit her in-laws in a dress like that. She imagined their shocked faces, her father's displeased scowl. She was embarrassed just thinking about it. Anna, Edith instructed firmly, ask the seamstresses to cover up the cleavage on this dress and take off the excessive decorations. Got it. Anna immediately agreed. As Anna scuttled off, Edith was impressed. Wow, she's very obedient. I didn't have to say it twice. I guess this is normal. The Rigelhof maids were the exception. Edith surveyed the rest of the wardrobe. The rest of the dresses needed some altering done, too. And, oh right, last night was their wedding night. Should she splatter a bit of blood on the sheets for appearances? She quickly dismissed the thought. Never mind. If she did something like that on her own, Killian would flip out. Besides, just like in the novel, Killian was clearly saving his virginity for Rise. Nothing wrong with a hot virgin, Edith mused with a smirk. But it seemed like overkill to have the secondary love interest be a virgin, too. These novel tropes were something else. Still, last night, why did Killian even drop by? Just to pick a fight with her. Anyways, she'd get to see that gorgeous face again, so it was a win for her. Oh, and those pecs. Her pleasant daydream was interrupted. All finished, my lady, Anna announced. My lady. Oh, yes. Edith snapped back to reality. Anna informed her that her hair was done, and the seamstress had also finished with the alterations. Already? Thanks. Edith exclaimed. Get it together, Suna Chwe, she chided herself. You already told yourself you won't fall for him. Don't be silly. Dressed appropriately, Edith greeted the Duke and Duchess. Good morning, your graces. Did you have a restful night's sleep? The Duchess smiled kindly. Edith must be tired, she remarked, but still dropped by early in the morning. She then gently asked if Edith was perhaps feeling nervous around them. Of course not. Thank you, Edith replied, as the Duchess invited her to take a seat. Edith noted there was only one teacup on her side of the table. They must have already heard that Killian didn't sleep in the bridal suite. Subtle. Right, Edith, the Duchess began. I know the Count adored you and treasured you. The Duke then cut in, his tone businesslike. He was curious as to what Edith knew of her duties as the lady of the household. Thankfully, she had Edith's memories. I can manage the ledgers and administration, she replied confidently. She quickly added that, of course, she was sure their family had its preferred methods, and she'd be happy to learn if they would be so gracious as to teach her. The Duke looked faintly surprised. I see. He then remarked coolly that he could see Count Rigelhof taught her those specific skills, if nothing else. The implication was clear. Edith was aware they didn't see her in the best light, but she hadn't expected them to so blatantly, albeit indirectly, accuse her of espionage. She kept her composure. If you don't trust me with that yet, she said smoothly, I am happy to learn other tasks. I will try my best to learn quickly. The Duchess seemed pleased. I'm glad the Count has taught you well, she said. In that case, why don't you help me with my tasks starting in 2 weeks? If you need something before then, you can tell me now. Thank you, Edith replied. Then perhaps you can find someone to show me around the grounds. The Duchess paused. Killian should help you with that. Edith almost scoffed. He wouldn't even sleep in the bridal suite. The Duchess, noticing Edith's lack of enthusiasm, quickly added, Never mind, I'll find someone for you. Edith gracefully took her leave. The Duchess bid her goodbye. Once outside, Edith let out a huge sigh of relief. Phew, she could barely breathe in there. A voice startled her. Are you all right? It was a blonde man with glasses. Yes, sorry, Edith replied, flustered. I was just nervous. You must be Baron Rhinon Filch, right? She asked. He simply nodded. Nice to meet you, Edith said with her most charming smile. As it turned out, the Duchess had assigned Baron Rhinon Filch, the builder in charge of household administration, to show her around. Just like Anna, her maid, he wasn't mentioned in the novel. Having no prior information about him made her a little nervous, but it also made this place feel like its own reality, rather than just the plot of a book. Baron Filch, all business, asked if it would be all right to begin straight away. He mentioned he was on a tight schedule due to his other duties. Yes, sorry. Let's get started now, Edith replied, trying to match his pace. As they dashed off, Edith wondered internally, Are all the characters not mentioned in the novel this cold? Baron Filch began the tour with the jewelry collection. The most important jewels are stored here, he stated. For special occasions, you may end up wearing some of them. Next was the armory. His Grace and his sons frequent this place, Baron Filch explained. Each piece is the work of a renowned craftsman. Edith was genuinely impressed. At the heart of the residence, we have the main library, he continued, gesturing towards a vast room. It houses many rare books. Can I come to use it any time? Edith asked eagerly. Or do I need to get permission? Baron Filch informed her that as a member of the Duke's family, she could visit at any time. The same applied to Sistine Hall, where new artworks were displayed monthly. How delightful! Edith beamed. In her past life, she couldn't even afford to go to the local art gallery. Here, there was a gallery right in the house. This is Sistine Hall, Baron Filch announced as they entered an opulent hall. Since the grounds are too extensive to cover in just a day, we shall end the tour here for today, he stated. Edith thanked him profusely. I'm excited to live in such a magnificent house. You're such an engaging speaker, I hardly noticed the time passing by. She laughed. I was just doing my duty, Baron Filch replied stoically. If you have time the day after tomorrow, we'll finish the rest of the tour then. Edith readily agreed. As they walked back, Baron Filch paused. Oh, I suppose I should tell you about this place on our way back. We are at the Grand Gazebo. Edith looked puzzled. The Grand Gazebo. Yes, he affirmed. It's the perfect place to see the grounds. When we have guests over, we invite them here. The Duke and Duchess enjoy spending time here as. His voice trailed off as he gestured, and Edith followed his gaze. Baron Filch stammered, Why, young Master Killian? Edith, initially wowed by the picturesque view from the gazebo, suddenly saw them, Killian, Cliff, and Rise, having tea together. Whoa, why would the young master be there on a day like today? Baron Filch muttered, clearly flustered. Edith, however, felt a strange calm. Oh, I guess it's normal to be thrown off guard. To see a newlywed groom having tea with another woman the morning after the wedding. She briefly wondered what the original Edith did in the novel in this situation. Then she shrugged internally. She didn't really care. She was more interested in enjoying the lavish facilities in this manner. Turning back to the Baron, Edith smiled serenely. The gazebo truly is beautiful. The grounds must be even more stunning in spring. Her hair fluttered in the breeze. They are. Baron Filch agreed nervously, clearly unsettled by her lack of reaction. I can see myself coming here often too, Edith mused, then turned to leave. Shall we head back, Rhinon? You said you were busy. Later, Duke Axel sat at his desk, pen in hand. So, how did she react? He asked Baron Filch. She was cooperative, Rhinon reported. She seemed to have grasped the layout quickly. She especially liked the gallery in Sistine Hall. Anything out of the ordinary? The Duke pressed. Not at all, Rhinon replied. Unlike the rumors, she gave off an air of dignity. Oh, something to note. Rhinon continued. On our way back, we passed by the gazebo, and we came across Miss Rise and the two young masters having tea. The Duke's quill snapped in two. What? He bit out, his eyes flashing. He sighed heavily. I told him not to give her any excuses to find fault with us. To think he was chatting with another woman the morning after his wedding. The Duke recalled his explicit instructions to Killian. This was a marriage on paper, a political maneuver to prevent Count Rigelhof from allying with Grand Duke Langston, at least until the end of the year. Killian had accepted, but with the cold stipulation not to ask him for any more than that. The Duke clenched his fist. Killian should know better, but then Baron Filch added, but Lady Edith didn't seem to care at all. What? The Duke looked up, surprised. Rhinon elaborated, although I couldn't read her mind. She did not make a fuss or become agitated. She simply left as if she hadn't seen anything. The Duke leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. It looks like we shouldn't underestimate Edith Rigelhof. Back in her room, Anna approached Edith, who was finishing a meal. Let me clean up if you are done with your meal. Oh, thanks, Anna, Edith replied. She fidgeted slightly. I couldn't afford to eat out often in my past life, so I'm not used to others serving me. Ah, Anna, Edith said brightly. Thanks for all your work this morning. Have you had a chance to eat lunch? You should go eat. I'll call you if I need you. Very well. Thank you, my lady, Anna replied, bowing. Edith watched her go, wondering, did I just make myself seem suspicious by being too nice? Oh well, at least she'd made a good impression on the Duke and Duchess. Now the only problem was how to act around Rise. Rise Sinclair was born to be the main character of this world. But her life was full of turmoil before she arrived at the Redwicks Manor. The Sinclair children bullied her relentlessly for her illegitimate birth. She was the victim of their undisguised persecution. Then one day, she saved Duchess Rudwick from falling off her horse and caught the Duchess's eye. Furious to learn about the young girl's abuse, the Rudwicks asked for custody of Rise in exchange for forgiving a large loan the Sinclairs owed them. The Sinclairs were quick to hand over their custody, but they later regretted their decision when they realized they had lost the chance to marry into the Duke's family. And so, Rise ends up with a happy ending and all the luck in the kingdom. Unlike me, Edith thought, sipping her tea, her mind drifting to her own past. Her life as Suna Chwe had been full of misfortune from beginning to end. At work, she was bullied by her manager, who was only 1 year her senior. After work, she broke up with her boyfriend, who had canceled on her to sleep with another woman, a fact she discovered through his callous texts. After that devastating day, she was only on her way home, hoping to escape into her favorite web novels. And that was the end, a sudden fall, a hand reaching out in the dark. She often wondered what her brother did after she died on those stairs. Did he feel any remorse? Did her parents even cry over her death? Or were their tears reserved for their precious son? They probably cared more about her brother than me. Right, who cares about them? Edith resolved, looking out the window. I'm going to focus on me first. Her gaze fell upon a figure outside. Under the shade of a large tree, there was Rise, engrossed in a book. Maybe I should try to get close to her, Edith mused. Anything's better than standing around doing nothing. As she slid the window open, she heard a surprised voice from below. Killian. Beneath the shade of a sprawling tree, Killian approached Rise, who was deeply absorbed in a book. He couldn't help but ask what captivating tale held her attention. Rise, looking up, explained she was reading about the history of the imperial court, confessing she'd never had formal lessons on the topic. A soft, almost wistful smile touched Rise's lips. She harbored a quiet concern, hoping her lack of formal education wouldn't somehow reflect poorly on Killian or cause him any embarrassment. Killian's expression softened with a supportive smile. He encouraged her pursuit of knowledge, assuring Rise that if learning brought her fulfillment, he would gladly offer any assistance she might need. Watching them from a window, Edith couldn't help but analyze the scene. Killian's supportive but restrained offer, she thought, was typical of a secondary male lead. If it had been Cliff, he would have promised Rise the world, telling her to focus solely on him and her happiness. Edith mused on the familiar tropes of romantic fantasies. Despite preferring Killian's sincere offer, she believed Cliff, the main love interest, was destined to win. Deciding it was too late to join them and not wanting to eavesdrop, she resolved to leave. Just as Edith turned to leave, a voice called out, making her pause. It was Cliff, wondering why Killian was there alone and inquiring about Edith's whereabouts. Edith, slightly veiled by the curtain, overheard Cliff's question. Killian, addressing Rise, gently suggested she didn't need to be overly concerned about Edith, perhaps sensing her unease at Cliff's arrival. Killian further explained to Rise that they were merely keeping Edith at the estate for a short while. With a smooth swish, Edith fully revealed herself, stepping out from behind the curtain. Edith felt a chill as she fully registered Killian's words. So that was his perception of her, someone merely being kept. Elsewhere, Layla Sinclair was in a state of utter disbelief and rage. She frantically questioned what was wrong with Cliff, her voice laced with hysteria, demanding to know why it had to be her asterisk. Layla's fury intensified as she clutched her head, her eyes wide with outrage. Of all the women in the world, she shrieked internally, why did Cliff choose that asterisk woman, Edith Rigelhof? A maid, likely accustomed to Layla's outbursts, calmly inquired about the cause of her distress this time. Layla, incredulous, shot back, demanding if the maid truly didn't know. Demian Sinclair, Layla's older brother, leaned casually against a doorframe, a smirk playing on his lips. He nonchalantly acknowledged the news. Edith Rigelhof had married Killian Rudwick. Oh, that, he seemed to imply, as if it were trivial. Layla, far from placated, turned her fury on Demian. She couldn't comprehend why it had to be Edith Rigelhof. Demian, with a teasing glint in his eye, mused aloud that perhaps the Rudwicks had a penchant for collecting unremarkable women. Layla, incensed by her brother's mockery, demanded if he found her distress amusing. Demian coolly retorted that smashing teacups certainly wouldn't resolve the situation. Demian's smirk deepened. He leaned forward, a knowing look in his eyes, suggesting to Layla that he possessed some crucial information she didn't. Layla, impatient and demanding, crossed her arms. She urged Demian to stop stringing her along and get straight to the point, wanting to know the secret he was withholding. Demian picked up a teacup, his movements unhurried. He commented on Layla's characteristic impatience, a condescending tone in his voice. Taking a sip of tea, Demian posed a question to his sister, his eyes gleaming with cunning. He challenged her to think through what might have incentivized the Rudwicks and Rigelhofs to arrange such a marriage, questioning the benefits of their alliance. Demian then elaborated on Count Rigelhof's assets. He held the rights to iron mined in the southern regions, meaning he possessed the raw materials crucial for manufacturing weapons. Setting his cup down with a soft clank, Demian posed another question to Layla, urging her to consider why control over weapon manufacturing might be particularly important at that moment. Layla, clearly out of her depth in matters of political intrigue, scoffed. Weapons? How was she supposed to know the significance of that? Demian chuckled, a patronizing air about him. He condescendingly addressed his dear sister, implying her ignorance, but then suggesting she must surely be aware of the current political landscape. He then painted a picture of the political arena. Two main powers vying for control: Grand Duke Langston, hungry for the throne, and the young emperor with his supporters. Demian explained the strategic implications. Giving Grand Duke Langston the power to produce weaponry was too risky. Duke Rudwick, a key supporter of the young emperor, needed to prevent Count Rigelhof from allying with Langston. This marriage was the linchpin. Layla's eyes widened in frustration. This explanation was hardly good news for her. She accused Demian of teasing her, reminding him he'd promised to explain why they needed to marry, implying there was more to it than just politics. Demian, with a sly smile, acknowledged that was the common understanding. But he added, leaning in conspiratorially, this was where things became truly interesting for Layla. He then posed a tantalizing question, a finger to his lips. Was Count Rigelhof truly on a leash, controlled by this marriage? Or was there another layer to the scheme? The scene shifted to a flashback, Count Rigelhof roaring at Edith. He berated her, demanding if she could do anything properly, his hand raised as if to strike. Edith cowered, covering her face. Edith, trembling, apologized profusely to her father, promising she wouldn't make any more mistakes. The Count, unimpressed, merely grunted that she had better not. The Count's tirade continued, his voice a disembodied threat. He warned Edith that if she failed to extract information from Count Everton's son, she would be denied dinner for the next week. Returning to the present, Demian watched Count Rigelhof interacting with someone. He mused that Edith Rigelhof was never the cold, cunning villainess she pretended to be. This was a critical piece of information. Layla listened, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. No way, she thought, struggling to reconcile Demian's words with Edith's notorious reputation. Demian affirmed his statement with a confident smile. He might find it hard to believe, he told Layla, but he had witnessed Edith's true nature with his own eyes. A predatory glint appeared in Demian's eyes. He savored the thought of the unfolding drama, expressing his anticipation to see how everything would play out. Demian internally strategized. Once the perfect moment arrived to reveal the truth about Edith, he could bring about the downfall of the Rigelhofs. Weeks later, Rhinon, the Ludwig family's steward, was concluding a tour of the manor with Edith. He gestured towards the grounds, explaining that this was another way to the gazebo. Edith remarked that it had taken an entire week to see the whole estate, even in pieces. Rhinon, adjusting his glasses, pondered aloud what Edith would do with her free time now that the introductory tour was complete. Edith, with a newfound sense of purpose, assured Rhinon he needn't worry about her being idle. Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement. Rhinon informed her that the Duchess had said she would give Edith tasks starting today. Edith exclaimed with delight at the news. Edith practically bounced with eagerness, a cute, chibi-fied version of herself momentarily appearing. She confessed to Rhinon that she had been getting incredibly bored and antsy with nothing to do all day. Edith, ready to get started, asked Rhinon for directions to the Duchess's office, confirming if it was down the hall, the third door on the left. Turning to leave, Edith thanked Rhinon with a bright smile. She proudly stated that she considered herself a pretty good student, having memorized the mansion's layout, and cheekily asked if he didn't agree. Rhinon, ever the stoic steward, pushed his glasses up. He dryly commented that it would be stranger to forget after a week of repetition. Edith simply acknowledged his point. As Edith approached the office, Rise Sinclair, already present and seated, greeted her warmly, welcoming Lady Edith. Edith beamed at Rise, her greeting enthusiastic and friendly. Edith clasped her hands, expressing her delight at the prospect of working with Rise. She mentioned it was her first time undertaking such tasks, and she hoped to learn a great deal from her. Rise blushed charmingly, modestly stating that she merely helped her grace here and there. Edith internally found Rise's blushing incredibly cute. The Duchess entered, observing the two young women with a pleased smile. She remarked that they looked like they had grown close already. Edith, flustered, realized she should have greeted her mother-in-law first. The Duchess, with a warm and reassuring smile, told Edith not to worry. She then turned to Rise, asking her to explain the documents she had been organizing. Rise readily agreed. As Rise began her explanation, the Duchess glanced towards the door, mentioning that they should be there any minute. Edith, curious, asked if she was waiting for someone. Rise, with a slightly surprised expression, realized Edith wouldn't have known about the upcoming visitors. Rise then informed Edith that her grace had called for the seamstresses. Edith processed the word seamstresses, a jolt of recognition hitting her. Edith's eyes widened. This was it. A major plot point from the novel was unfolding right before her eyes, and Rise was at the center of it. A servant announced the arrival of the seamstresses from Rueil dressmakers, stating they were in the drawing room. The Duchess, pleased, confirmed this and suggested they wrap up their current work and head over. Edith, still trying to recall the specifics from the novel, agreed with her mother-in-law. She silently hoped she would remember the details once she saw the dress designs. In the drawing room, the Duchess flipped through a design book, sighing thoughtfully. She mused that as she grew older, she found herself consistently choosing the same styles. Suddenly, it clicked for Edith. She remembered this scene from the novel vividly. The Duchess, with a gentle smile, had an idea. She turned to Edith and Rise, suggesting that the two of them pick something out for her instead. Edith internally groaned. A pop quiz. She felt the outcome was already predetermined. The Duchess would either prefer Rise's pick or choose both but shower more compliments on Rise's selection. Edith glanced at Rise, who calmly asked if that would be all right. The weight of the novel's plot pressed down on Edith. Edith tried to calm her racing thoughts. It wasn't that complicated, she told herself, even as she gulped nervously. The outcome, Edith knew, was already decided. Rise, besides being the story's beloved protagonist, had spent 5 years learning the Duchess's tastes. In comparison, Edith felt hopelessly outmatched. Edith lamented her predicament internally, tears welling comically in her eyes. She'd only ever seen dresses like these in web novel illustrations. How could she possibly compete? The seamstress, Madame Rueil, looked on. Rise, ever composed and thoughtful, quickly made her selection. She presented a design, asking how the Duchess liked it. Edith was stunned Rise had picked one already. Rise pointed to a blue silk dress on page 11 of the catalogue. She confidently stated that the Duchess would look elegant in it. Madame Rueil, the head seamstress, praised Rise's excellent choice. She explained that it was their latest design, crafted from the finest silk, the same quality used by the palace. The Duchess listened intently. Edith watched, a sense of resignation washing over her. Rise had, as expected, picked the perfect answer. Madame Rueil continued to elaborate, noting that while the Duchess's fair skin would complement any color, the blue silk would beautifully bring out her amber eyes. Edith, however, had her own thoughts on what she would have chosen. The Duchess then turned her attention to Edith, asking if anything had caught her eye. Edith, thinking quickly, acknowledged that Rise had made an excellent choice, making it hard to suggest anything else. However, she then proposed a different dress, suggesting it as a way for the Duchess to try something new. Edith continued, presenting her choice with a smile. She suggested that if the Duchess ever wanted to change up her wardrobe, a dress like the one she was indicating might do the job perfectly. Madame Rueil, looking at Edith's selection, exclaimed that she had impeccable taste. She noted that few women could appreciate the unique color combination of that particular dress. Edith internally acknowledged that from her modern perspective, the design looked perfect for the elegant Duchess. However, she still felt a knot of anxiety, swallowing hard. The Duchess examined Edith's choice, admitting the dress was beautiful, but perhaps a little ostentatious for her personal tastes. Edith correctly guessed that the Duchess found it a bit intimidating. Edith, feigning disappointment with a comical pout, lamented what a shame it was, adding that only mature ladies like the Duchess could truly pull off such flashy outfits. Internally, she reminded herself she wasn't trying to win. Beating the main character would only backfire. Edith then smoothly flattered her mother-in-law, insisting that the Duchess's beauty and elegance would bring the dress to life. The Duchess chuckled, admitting Edith was making her blush, and decided to trust her judgment. With 2 dresses selected for the Duchess, she then turned to Rise, suggesting they choose a dress for her now. Rise looked up, surprised, questioning if it was for her. Rise, with a sweet and slightly flustered smile, waved her hands dismissively. She insisted she was really okay with anything, and already had plenty of dresses. The Duchess, undeterred, began flipping through the catalog again, pointing out a design she thought would be perfect for a spring tea party, and then another she believed would suit Rise well. Edith observed. Edith chimed in, pointing to another design. She remarked that not many ladies could pull off that particular shade of pink, but Rise, with her flawless skin and rosy cheeks, would match it perfectly. The Duchess, looking pleased, agreed with Edith, acknowledging her good eye for these things. She then asked Edith for her opinion on a white dress with an empire waist for Rise. Rise, meanwhile, silently hoped it would all be over soon. Madame Rueil offered her professional opinion. While Rise would look good in the white empire waist dress, it might make her look too young. She suggested a different simple white robe, to which the Duchess agreed, noting an aquamarine brooch could add a splash of color. Madame Rueil, satisfied, clapped her hands, concluding that 5 dresses for Rise would suffice for now. Edith complimented her mother-in-law on her excellent choices. The Duchess suddenly remembered something, tapping her head as if chiding herself. She told Edith she also needed to choose a design for herself. Edith politely declined, saying she didn't need new dresses, but then inquired if Madame Rueil also did alterations. Madame Rueil, slightly surprised by the question, confirmed that of course they did alterations. She asked what exactly Edith needed altered. Edith felt a wave of relief. Edith explained she had several dresses that needed altering and called for her maid, Anna, to bring them. Edith's internal monologue revealed her strategy. The best way to survive reincarnation in a fantasy novel was to change how everyone perceived her. She requested some jewels be removed from a dress and the neckline raised, finding it currently too revealing for her comfort. Madame Rueil chuckled, observing that Lady Edith's tastes must have changed a lot. Edith, smiling, simply agreed that one could say that. The Duchess and Rise watched as Edith discussed the alterations, specifying how high she wanted the neckline and pointing to another part of the dress needing adjustment. Edith stretched, relieved. Finally, that was resolved. She had successfully navigated a potentially tricky social situation and set her plan in motion. A mischievous glint appeared in Edith's eyes. She mused that the diamonds removed from her dresses alone would be worth a fortune. She reflected on her efforts to get on the Duchess's good side, even calling her mother. As long as she kept this up, she hoped for a peaceful life. Suddenly, Killian's stern face appeared in her thoughts. She knew he wouldn't come to her room without a reason. Her brief moment of triumph was tinged with apprehension. As if summoned by her thoughts, Killian appeared. Edith began to ask what brought him there, but he curtly instructed her to follow him. As they walked, Killian informed Edith that Rise had invited her to tea. His tone was flat, devoid of warmth. Edith processed this information. An invitation from Rise. She wondered if this event had happened in the original story. Oh well, she'd find out soon enough. She mused that Rise must have asked Killian to fetch her. It was a logical, if slightly awkward, arrangement. Edith couldn't help but admire Killian's physique from behind. His back, his broad shoulders, his slim waist. She found herself unexpectedly attracted. But she quickly reminded herself, just looking, Rise, don't worry. Killian suddenly turned, catching her mid-ogling. Yikes, Edith thought, flustered, wondering if he'd noticed her checking him out. Her embarrassed grin was probably a dead giveaway. Killian, his expression severe, issued a stern warning. Edith immediately stammered an apology, her face flushed. He instructed her to watch what she said in front of Rise. His tone left no room for argument. Killian's eyes were cold as he delivered his ultimatum. Rise was practically family to him, he stated, far more precious than Edith. He demanded to know if she understood. Edith, surprisingly unfazed by the harshness, merely thought, oh, that's all. It seemed she had braced herself for worse. Facing him, Edith commented with a wry smile that he really knew how to hurt a woman. The grand, empty room seemed to amplify the tension between them. Killian questioned her meaning, stating he was human too. His expression was incredulous as he added, with cutting sarcasm, that he thought she was a viper. Edith, with a challenging look, acknowledged his courtesy. She then posed a sharp question. Did he want her to treat Miss Rise with the same level of courtesy he was currently showing her? Killian stepped closer, his demeanor threatening. He accused her of intentionally trying to upset him and manipulate him into appearing as the villain. Edith, however, coolly informed him that unfortunately, she couldn't be influenced so easily. His what? Showed his surprise. Edith's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course, she thought, the fact that he had hurt her feelings was a separate issue, one she wouldn't forget. They arrived at the garden where Rise was waiting. Rise greeted Edith warmly, and Edith thanked her for the invitation, her voice bright despite the preceding encounter. Killian stood by, an impassive observer. Cliff, also present, picked up his teacup and remarked to Edith that she seemed to be adjusting well to her life there. With a smirk, Cliff then commented that Edith and Killian were still newlyweds. He provocatively suggested they should go on a honeymoon, clearly trying to stir the pot and perhaps gauge their reactions. Edith internally scoffed at Cliff's obvious ploy. Did he want to send Killian off with her so he could monopolize Rise's time? She gave him a sidelong glare, then demurely replied that she wasn't sure, as Killian seemed very busy. Edith then cleverly turned the tables on Cliff. She remarked that now winter was over, shouldn't he be heading out on his rounds of their lands? Cliff pondered this, admitting it was true. Cliff, seizing the opportunity, turned to Rise and asked if she would like to accompany him, reminding her that she had previously expressed a desire to travel more. Killian interjected, telling Cliff not to put Rise on the spot. He then addressed Rise directly, advising her to ignore what Cliff had said, effectively shielding her from pressure. Cliff, feigning innocence, asked if he had put her on the spot. He then insinuated that Rise would be more uncomfortable if he left, as she would then be alone with Killian and Edith. Edith, sipping her tea, silently agreed with Cliff's assessment of the awkward dynamic. Edith observed the trio. When Cliff was present with Rise and Killian, they could almost pass for model siblings, a picture of familial harmony. However, Edith knew that as soon as Cliff left the equation, the romantic potential between Rise and Killian would become undeniable to everyone, and Rise would inevitably bear the brunt of scandalous rumors. Edith watched Cliff, a slight smile playing on her lips. He was cunning, as expected of the main protagonist. His eyes, however, held a calculating glint. Cliff turned his attention to Edith, asking for her opinion. Edith, momentarily lost in thought, blinked and asked him to clarify what he was referring to. Cliff, with a charming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, elaborated. He wanted her thoughts on the notion of him leaving the manor, pointedly reminding her that once he left, only she, Rise, and Killian would remain. His gaze was intense as he reiterated the situation, emphasizing that Rise would be left in the manor with Killian and Edith. The implication hung heavy in the air. Cliff leaned back, his expression unreadable, and repeated the word alone, letting the significance of it sink in. He was clearly testing Edith. Edith felt a nervous squirm. What an incredibly strange and loaded question. She struggled to maintain her composure. Cliff watched her, a smirk playing on his lips. Edith knew he was toying with her, aware that she wasn't particularly loved by anyone there. Edith let out a delicate sigh, a subtle gesture of her internal annoyance. She mused that no one in this household seemed to possess any manners. She took a sip of her tea, affecting an air of nonchalance. She stated coolly that she didn't care either way whether he stayed or left. Edith then addressed Cliff directly, reminding him that touring the land was part of his duties as the heir. She asserted it wasn't her place to tell him whether or not he should go. Cliff started to protest that wasn't what he meant. Continuing her carefully worded response, Edith then addressed the matter of Rise accompanying him. She stated that, honestly, she thought it seemed a bit presumptuous on his part. Edith elaborated, pointing out that traveling such long distances by carriage was exhausting. Furthermore, Rise wasn't his wife. Wasn't it, she suggested with a hint of challenge, a bit unreasonable to request her company? Rise, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up, her voice soft but clear. She asked Cliff if he needed to leave immediately, her expression concerned. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurred in her demeanor. Edith caught the fleeting change in Rise. What was that, she wondered. Perhaps she had seen wrong, misinterpreting the subtle nuance. Taking another sip of tea, Edith concluded internally that Rise was not the person she needed to be wary of. The real threat was far more cunning. Cliff, leaning back with a satisfied smile, remarked that it wasn't a firm plan, just an idea. He then added, his gaze lingering on Edith, that it would appear his new sister-in-law was quite the understanding person. Edith recognized those predatory, golden eyes. This was him, the novel's infuriating male lead, always calculating, always one step ahead. Killian, observing Edith's pointed remarks to Cliff, couldn't help but wonder why she had said those things. Her words had been surprisingly direct and protective of Rise. Edith, catching Cliff's insinuation, responded with a forced laugh. She assured him she tried her best to be understanding, just as she was being at that very moment, her tone laced with subtle sarcasm. Later that evening, Killian found Rise alone on the terrace. He greeted her gently, asking what she was doing out there by herself at such an hour. Rise looked up, a troubled expression on her face. Killian, noticing her unease, asked if something was troubling her. Killian, with a reassuring smile, told Rise it was nothing, trying to ease her worries. He then mentioned he heard she had ordered some new dresses that day, adding that his mother had been excited to dress her in new clothes. Rise admitted she felt bad because his mother had already bought her so many. Killian gently reassured Rise that she had nothing to feel bad about. He explained that his mother had always envied mothers who had daughters. He told Rise that he should be the one thanking her for being such a good daughter to his mother, filling a void she had long felt. Killian elaborated that, after all, his mother's husband and even her sons had all become knights, leaving her in a predominantly male household. A daughter figure like Rise was a joy to her. Rise, looking downcast, confessed she was sure his mother would have been happier buying dresses for Edith, not her. Killian looked at Rise, puzzled by her statement. He asked her what she was talking about, clearly confused by her assumption. His eyes widened slightly in surprise as he corrected Rise's misconception. Edith hadn't bought a single dress that day. Rise whispered, "What?" in disbelief. Killian explained that Edith had only asked for alterations on her existing dresses. She had spent all her time picking out dresses for Rise and for his mother. The image of Edith, known for her extravagance, asking for mere alterations, flashed in his mind. Killian was incredulous. Edith Rigelhof, the woman who supposedly never wore the same dress twice, asking for alterations. This was a stark contrast to her reputation. Killian scoffed, misinterpreting Edith's actions. He concluded that Edith hadn't found the dresses good enough for herself, yet she was happy to order them for Rise and his mother. Rise tried to protest, saying that wasn't Edith's intention at all, but Killian was already convinced of his own narrative. His mind raced, connecting this to past events. Was Edith now showing her disapproval of the dressmakers? He recalled the obscenely revealing dress she wore at their wedding, thinking it must have been a deliberate statement. But then, he remembered, she had suddenly started to dress in demure outfits. He hadn't found her outfit particularly grating today. If she had exposed her skin, he would have noticed immediately. Killian's disdain for Edith resurfaced with venom. He internally branded her an indecent, promiscuous woman, declaring he couldn't stand the sight of her. The memory of her wedding dress and subsequent change in attire only fueled his distrust. Edith's earlier words echoed in his mind, "You really know how to hurt a woman." He was indeed hurting someone, but his perception was skewed, his anger misdirected. Rise, sensing his renewed animosity, gently asked Killian if he still hated Edith that much. Killian's response was immediate and harsh. "She's a snake." He elaborated, his voice cold, that Edith might be laying low in the grass for the moment, but she would bare her fangs as soon as they let down their guard. Rise could only whisper his name, her concern evident. Killian, lost in his distrust, resolved that he needed to find another dressmaker, one that would suit Edith's particular tastes. Clearly still believing her actions were a form of manipulation, he justified his harsh stance internally. He had no choice. It was all for the sake of the Rudwick name, to protect his family from what he perceived as Edith's venomous influence. Back in her room, Anna, Edith's maid, informed her that they were running low on her perfume and lipstick. She asked if she should call for the perfumer and makeup merchant. Edith paused. Makeup, it was true, these things didn't appear out of thin air. She realized with a jolt that, of course, she would have to pay for them with her own money. The thought gave her pause. Pay with her own money. The concept felt surprisingly foreign after years of relying on the Rigelhof fortune, or, in her past life, having very little to spend. Edith had always been worried about her place in this world as Edith Rigelhof, so she had been diligently saving an emergency fund. She recalled thankfully the diamonds from her altered dresses, though she hadn't sold them yet. She sighed. Still, Edith was a noble lady now. She supposed she had no choice but to buy luxury items like perfume and makeup. The irony wasn't lost on her. The girl who used to apply broken lipstick in bathroom stalls was now buying luxury items. A wave of melancholy washed over her. Now that she thought about it, She hadn't needed to be so secretive and frugal back then in her past life. She supposed she had hidden because she didn't want anyone to see that no one truly cared for her, that no one loved her. But this was a new life. She decided she should enjoy its luxuries and try some of this fantasy world's high-end makeup. With renewed determination, Edith instructed Anna to send for the perfumer. Anna promptly agreed. A little while later, the perfumer had presented his wares. Edith, however, was visibly stunned, her smile frozen, asking him to repeat what he had just said. What on earth was this guy saying? The price he quoted was astronomical, leaving Edith utterly flabbergasted. Rewind a few minutes. The perfumer, a distinguished gentleman, held up a small vial, explaining that the perfume was comprised of the finest Ashley roses. He added that it was very popular among young ladies. Edith, anticipating a pleasant shopping experience, listened intently, though Anna seemed a bit nervous. The perfumer poetically described the fragrance: a hint of fresh grass, balanced by Ashley roses, with middle notes of wild strawberries and musky base notes of ambergris. It sounded exquisite. He then offered to replicate this fragrance for her and asked how she would like to proceed. Edith, trying to sound casual, inquired about the cost to replicate the scent. The perfumer calmly stated that for a bottle of the same size, it would cost around 90,000 sinas. The word doom echoed in Edith's mind as the reality of the price hit her. 90,000 won for a single bottle of perfume. That was more than twice her monthly grocery budget in her past life. About 900 USD, absolutely staggering. Edith, trying to recover, nervously asked about other rose-based perfumes, hoping for a more reasonable option. Anna watched her with a concerned expression. The perfumer explained that the most commonly used were Tachinian roses, which had the deep, strong scent most people imagined. However, he noted, young women often didn't prefer this scent as it was rather heavy. He then recommended sticking with the Ashley roses she'd been using, or perhaps trying other top-tier petals like Tethys or Nathaniel roses, clearly pushing the more expensive options, oblivious to Edith's mounting panic. For the same bottle with higher quality petals, the perfumer quoted around 200,000 sinas, explaining the superior fragrance. Edith internally screamed, how could a small bottle of perfume cost over 2 million won, about 2,000 USD? Edith, forcing a smile, told the perfumer she thought she'd stick with what she'd been using, not wanting to change her scent so suddenly. It was a polite excuse to avoid the exorbitant prices. Anna, ever helpful, then made a suggestion. She asked Edith if she might consider mixing a bit of the Nathaniel roses with the Ashley roses. Anna elaborated, acknowledging Edith was used to a familiar scent, but now that she was married, choosing a slightly deeper fragrance might not be a bad idea. It was a tactful compromise. The perfumer, seeing an opportunity, called it a wise compromise. He offered a bottle of this custom blend for around 130,000 sinas. Edith considered it. Edith, deciding to haggle, bit her lip and asked, with a hopeful smile, if there was any chance he could take 120,000 sinas. The perfumer looked aghast. That price wouldn't leave any margin for him. Edith, seeing his reaction, reconsidered. Edith quickly revised her offer with a charming smile, suggesting 125,000 sinas. She explained that since she just got married, she didn't want to appear wasteful. She then promised to only buy her fragrances from him in the future, a sweet but calculated move. The perfumer, momentarily taken aback, conceded. He acknowledged that the new lady of the household was quite thrifty, admitting she got him there. He agreed to her price, taking her word for future business. Edith thanked him, relieved the negotiation was over. After the perfumer left, Edith sighed, lamenting the ridiculous cost of living in this world. Anna offered to organize the new cosmetics Edith had bought. All she had bought was a single bottle of perfume, a lipstick, and a brush, and these 3 simple items had cost her 5 million won, about 500 USD. Edith clutched her head, sobbing comically. She felt like she was losing all sense of her finances in this new, expensive reality. She sighed again, thinking she couldn't even bring herself to buy the things she really wanted to buy, the things that truly caught her eye. Even though she probably could have spent more, without making a significant dent in her emergency funds, something held her back. What was wrong with her? She couldn't spend money even when she had it. The frugality of her past life was deeply ingrained. It was just that she was so used to being stingy from her past life. Her paycheck had been small, and her brother would often take even that. She felt like splurging would be a betrayal of her past, struggling self. She stretched, resolving to take a little more time to get used to the luxury of having money to spend. It was a process. In the meantime, she reminded herself, there were other luxuries in this life to enjoy, things that couldn't be bought with money. With a brighter outlook, Edith informed Anna she was heading to the Sistine Hall for a bit. Anna acknowledged her. Walking through the grand hall, filled with sculptures and paintings, Edith felt like she had an entire art gallery to herself. It was a magnificent, private luxury. What was a bottle of fancy perfume, she thought, when she had access to such breathtaking beauty and culture anytime she wished? She admired the artworks, marveling at the diverse sizes and subjects. Each piece told a story, each corner held a new discovery. One painting, in particular, caught her eye for its incredible detail. It was practically photorealistic. She wondered in awe how the artist had achieved such mastery. Another painting reminded her of Monet, its sparkling array of colors and light utterly beautiful. She couldn't believe she could appreciate such masterpieces up close. Standing before a particularly large and dramatic painting, Edith felt overwhelmed by its sheer scale and emotional impact. Suddenly, a voice from behind made her flinch. Killian dryly commented on her innovative way of appreciating art, clearly having seen her lost in thought. Edith turned, slightly flustered, and asked what brought him there. She hadn't expected to see him in the gallery. Killian raised an eyebrow, questioning what was so surprising about him coming to appreciate art in his own house. His tone was, as usual, a bit condescending. Edith, recovering quickly, conceded his point with a sheepish smile. It was his house, after all. Killian then remarked that since the Rigelhofs didn't care much for art, he supposed she must be intrigued by the existence of the art gallery. Edith mentally rolled her eyes at his jab. What was his problem? Edith agreed with him, admitting she did feel overwhelmed by the painting before them, trying to steer the conversation back to the art. She mused aloud, her gaze returning to the artwork. How just one painting could hold so many human emotions. Looking at the grand battle scene, Edith observed that one could see the tragedy and anguish of war, yet also the gods' determination to end that tragedy. Killian added that the end of any war is bitter, even in victory, noting the figure didn't look pleased by the praise. Killian explained that the painting celebrated his grandfather leading the country to victory in the war against the Yanork kingdom. Edith listened, a new understanding dawning. If the painting depicted his grandfather, then the god figure must be modeled after. Her eyes widened in realization. Killian, noticing her expression, asked if she really didn't know. Edith, a chibi version of herself looking sheepish, admitted she had no idea. Edith explained that nobody had ever mentioned he was an appreciator of fine art, and then, changing the subject slightly, asked again, what brought him there? Killian simply replied that people sometimes change when they get older. Killian, testing her, asked if she had a favorite artist. Edith admitted, embarrassed, that it hadn't been long since she'd taken an interest and didn't know any artists yet. Killian pressed, not a single one. Edith felt his familiar tactic of trying to make her look bad. She knew this was a verbal trap. She calmly reiterated that, as he himself had said, the Rigelhofs didn't have an affinity for art, turning his earlier jab back on him. Killian looked momentarily surprised, perhaps even a little flustered by her composure and quick wit. Was this boy actually impressed? Edith then recalled a detail from the novel, mentioning that her father was close friends with a painter who had made him model for painting. Killian, looking slightly annoyed, grumbled that it wasn't like he had asked for it. Edith couldn't help but stare at the painting, a teasing smile on her face. Killian, noticing, asked why she kept staring at it like that. Edith, feigning innocence, said it was no reason, prompting him to demand she tell him. She replied it was nothing important, just. She paused dramatically, then delivered her punchline. It's a bit small. Referring, of course, to the painted representation of his younger self. Killian blushed furiously, sputtering in protest. He vehemently denied that the body in the painting was modeled after him. Edith, thoroughly enjoying his reaction, merely said, "Oh, is that so?" Killian insisted that, of course, the son of a duke would never pose nude for a painter. Killian, still red-faced and flustered, grumbled, Sure, I got it," clearly not believing she did, and started to ask if she was even listening. He huffed in exasperation, declaring it was impossible to discuss art with her, and turned to leave. Edith suppressed a giggle. Edith chuckled to herself as he stormed off. Her life would indeed be boring without poking fun at him like this. It was a small, satisfying victory. She glanced back at the painting, a genuine smile on her face. He was, she had to admit, pretty cute when he was younger. Later, Edith strolled through the sun-drenched conservatory, adorned in a lovely new dress and hat. Ah, what a great day, she sighed contentedly. If she could live like this every day, she mused, she wouldn't ask for anything else. The peace and beauty were intoxicating. It had been 2 months since she reincarnated as Edith. She was growing accustomed to the peaceful, low-responsibility life of an aristocrat. The bright sunshine, the pleasant breeze, even the air tasted sweet. If only every day could be like this, she wished, feeling it was even better than she could have imagined. An in-house art gallery at her fingertips, luxury cosmetics she could use whenever she wanted. These were perks she cherished. Gourmet full-course meals every day. The sheer opulence was something she was slowly, but surely, getting used to. Even though some people, like Killian, still didn't think highly of her, Anna, with whom she spent the most time, was always courteous and kind. And not to mention, a secret pleasure she had discovered. Her eyes gleamed with anticipation. She spotted Rhinon in the distance and called out to him, greeting him cheerfully, noting it had been a while since she'd seen him. Rhinon, looking up from his documents, returned the greeting, hoping she had been doing well. He then politely inquired what brought her all the way there. Edith casually replied she was just on a stroll, explaining her new habit of walking around the garden in the mornings. She thanked him for the earlier tour, mentioning she hadn't had any problems finding her way around and often visited the art gallery. Rhinon acknowledged this was good to hear. Edith continued her cheerful chatter, asking if Rhinon had eaten already and remarking on what a marvelous day it was. Realizing he must be busy, she quickly excused herself, saying she wouldn't bother him any longer and bid him farewell. Rhinon watched her go, a thoughtful expression on his face. He adjusted his glasses, murmuring to himself that he was sure it was nothing, though a slight frown lingered. Edith continued her walk, pleased she had made it to her destination without any problem today. A rustle in the nearby bushes caught her attention. This was it, the true destination for her morning walks. Her eyes lit up as she saw 2 figures sparring in the training grounds, the clang of swords echoing in the air. The training grounds. And there was Killian, shirtless, engaged in a fierce sword fight. The sound of their blades clashing was exhilarating. Edith hid behind a tree, peeking out. As usual, her husband was full of vigor today. She couldn't take her eyes off him. It never got old. That broad chest, those dense muscles. With a powerful wish, Killian executed a swift maneuver. Edith's eyes were glued to his intricate muscles, the ripples on his back. This was definitely a highlight of her day. Edith found herself admitting, despite his annoying tendencies, Killian was certainly easy on the eyes. Definitely more her type than Cliff. Cliff might have the classic hero physique, but Edith mused she preferred Killian's softer, yet still fit, build. Some women just have specific tastes, you know. The sunlit garden was lovely, but Edith realized with a start, she needed to get going or risk being late. She offered a silent, grateful smile for the stimulating morning view she'd accidentally stumbled upon. A fleeting memory of Killian's rare smile crossed her mind. She'd never seen him look like that before. Back at her desk, Edith, formerly Suna Chwe, marveled that in 28 years, she'd never thought she'd fall for someone based purely on looks. Life's full of surprises. But then again, she'd never encountered anyone this handsome in her past life. The distraction was making it impossible to focus on her work. She took a deep breath, trying to concentrate on the documents before her. Focus, Edith, focus. Today's task, organizing the armory's purchase records, sounds thrilling. This kind of information seemed highly confidential. If they trusted her with this, did it mean she was finally earning their trust? A flicker of hope. Rise appeared, innocently asking Edith what she was doing. Edith, startled, greeted her. Edith explained she was organizing the documents her mother gave her into tables. Rise just looked puzzled. Tables. Edith elaborated that tables were a method to summarize information. Rise's continued confusion sparked a horrifying thought in Edith. Did tables not exist in this world? Though tables had a long history on Earth, perhaps the author of this fantasy world had other plans. Or maybe long-form prose just looked more impressive on paper here. Edith pressed on, trying to convince Rise of the format's efficiency for seeing everything at a glance. Surely Rise was smart enough to see it. Rise, ever so delicately, wondered if such a strange-looking format wouldn't seem odd to others. Just as Edith was internally congratulating herself on being a possible genius ahead of her time, the Duchess arrived, asking if something was wrong. Edith quickly greeted her. Rise explained to the Duchess that Edith had been asking her about something. The Duchess, bless her heart, immediately praised Rise for helping Edith so much. Oh, the irony. Edith felt a wave of déjà vu, the scene reminding her sharply of being a newbie report writer in her past life, always apologizing to her manager. The sudden memory made her feel dizzy, the papers in her hand crumpling slightly. Edith decided to seize the moment, asking the Duchess for her opinion on the table. The Duchess looked intrigued. Edith explained that since the records contained so much information, she was organizing it like this, pointing out columns for weapon types and key information. She continued, highlighting columns for quantity and prices, emphasizing how organizing by columns made everything much easier to understand. Rise listened quietly in the background. A sudden panic seized Edith. Oh wait, by showing off this efficient method, would it inadvertently make Rise look bad? Shoot, she'd forgotten her supposed role as the villain and supporting character. Hastily, she tried to backtrack, stammering that it was thanks to Rise. But the Duchess was already examining the document, impressed. She found it brilliantly organized and easy to read quickly, asking Edith how she'd come up with such an idea. Edith, caught off guard by the genuine praise, could only manage a surprised huh. The Duchess beamed, calling it a brilliant method, and declaring she should start summarizing information this way from now on. Then, the Duchess tasked Edith with organizing all the documents she was in charge of in this new format, so others could learn from her example. Edith's heart soared. With a bright, genuine smile, she eagerly agreed. Later, Killian, holding a letter, approached his mother with a question. He skeptically asked if that woman Edith had truly invented this method of using columns and rows to organize information. The Duchess proudly confirmed it. The Duchess added with a smile that Edith was very clever. Rise, in the background, looked on. Killian conceded that it did seem very efficient. His mind, however, immediately jumped to how she could also use such summarized information to sneak it away. Always suspicious, that one. The Duchess then mentioned to Killian that Edith, much like him, had been forced into an arranged marriage. She elaborated that Edith also carried the burden of leaving her home and living with people she didn't know. The Duchess gently urged Killian to try and find some sympathy for the girl. Just then, Rhinon, the ever-efficient aide, entered the room, politely excusing his interruption. He offered to return later if the young master was busy, not wanting to intrude. Killian, however, welcomed Rhinon, stating he was glad he came and had something to show him. Killian directed Rhinon's attention to what Edith had done with the documents he delivered that morning. Killian noted to Rise, who was present, that his mother seemed quite satisfied with Edith, and then asked Rhinon for his opinion. Rise, listening, had to admit to herself, with a hint of sweat, that Edith was right about everything. Killian remarked to Rise that, as she'd apparently said, Edith was indeed very knowledgeable. Rise clenched her hand, a wave of inadequacy washing over her. She'd never learned anything from the Sinclairs. Unlike her, Edith was a quick learner. Killian, observing the dynamics, felt a subtle sense that something was off. He mused internally that Rise had been allowed to assist his mother only after 4 years of education within their family. If Edith was clever enough to earn Rise's envy, it meant Edith wasn't just intelligent, but specifically trained for this type of work. The plot thickens, and considering her surprisingly astute understanding of art he'd glimpsed previously, she was definitely not as clueless as her reputation suggested. Edith greeted Killian, who had appeared in her room, with a smile, asking what brought him there so early in the morning. She playfully teased, wondering aloud if he'd come all this way because he missed her. Oh, the audacity. Killian, ever the charmer, flatly denied it. Edith, undeterred, retorted, asking if he was implying she should just state her business, and then he'd leave. Killian, with a challenging look, countered by asking if she would actually stick around if he asked her to linger. Edith sighed dramatically. He always had to have the final word. Killian coolly replied that he never learned how to lose. Touché. Edith internally admitted it was hard to stop herself from joking around with him, despite everything. Killian simply affirmed, of course, to her previous statement. A more sensible part of Edith's brain screamed that she should be begging him not to kill her, not engaging in witty banter. She genuinely wondered why he was there so early. Had Count Rigelhof provoked him, or perhaps he'd caught her snooping on her walks, or maybe, her thoughts spiraled, Rise had been sulking about yesterday's events, and Killian was here to reprimand her. She instantly regretted whatever she might have done. Deciding to diffuse any potential tension, Edith opted for some light small talk, commenting on the lovely weather. Killian acknowledged the weather, but added that the air was quite cold, it being so early. Suddenly, Killian leaned in, startling Edith. She stammered, asking what on earth he was doing and calling his name in surprise. Her heart hammered against her ribs. He was too close, way too close. Killian, his face near hers, inquired if his mother's preferred dressmaker was perhaps too elegant and refined for Edith's notoriously vulgar tastes. Edith stared at him, utterly dumbfounded by the sudden accusation. Killian elaborated, pointing out that everyone knew she never wore the same dress twice. So, the fact she hadn't bought a new dress was, in his mind, suspicious. He smirked, interpreting her lack of purchase as a passive-aggressive way to show disapproval of the dressmaker. This man could twist anything. Edith clenched her fist. The irony, she hadn't ordered anything precisely to change her extravagant image, and he was using that asterisk as a reason to hate her. Killian coolly offered to call for another dressmaker if she wished. Edith's patience snapped. She retorted sharply that Killian, you really don't know anything about me. She shot back that if she hadn't liked the dressmaker, she would have called someone else herself. Did he seriously think she'd care about others' opinions on such a personal matter? With rising anger, she accused him of merely looking for more excuses to hate her. She declared passionately that he just wanted to blame her for everything, trying to force her into the mold of his preconceived notions. A flashback to their cold, emotionless wedding ceremony underscored her frustration. She accused him directly. He wanted to ease his own mind by blaming her for everything. You always act like you're the victim, Edith yelled, her voice laced with fury, and that is cowardly. Killian merely scoffed. Edith pressed on, her voice dripping with sarcasm, questioning his so-called observations. After he threatened her family to force this marriage, did he really think she made threats? Killian, with a predatory smile, asked if not her, then who else could it have been? He pointedly reminded her that she was a Rigelhof too. The implication hit Edith hard. Ah, she understood. A wave of despair washed over her. Everyone in this house, she realized, saw her as nothing more than just another Rigelhof. Killian's own thoughts seemed to echo her earlier words, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. You don't know anything about me. Edith met his gaze, a sad, knowing smile on her lips as she repeated softly, nothing at all. Killian turned away, acknowledging he'd heard she was skilled at assisting his mother. Then he delivered his only advice. Don't do anything that would arouse suspicion. Thanks, Captain Obvious. After he left, Edith slumped to the floor, a bewildered laugh escaping her. Wow, something must have truly gotten into her to provoke him like that. She chided herself. Who was she kidding? She couldn't just stay there living in the lap of luxury. She needed to start looking for ways to get out of this gilded cage. Killian, walking away, paused, a troubled expression on his face. What on earth was he doing right now? Edith recalled the overpowering fragrance of roses in the room during their confrontation. It had been so strong, she couldn't even keep her head straight about what she was saying. Her words to him replayed in her mind, a quiet statement of fact. Killian, you don't know anything about me. Nothing at all. And a sliver of Killian's mind had to admit, with a jolt, that she was right about everything. He had only ever seen her as Count Rigelhof's daughter, a pawn in her father's schemes. Every single thing he thought he knew about her, he realized with a growing ache in his head, was filtered through the lens of her father. He pressed his temples. Why did he get these splitting headaches so often these days? Rise appeared, greeting Killian with a bright good morning, her smile as fresh as the flowers she held. She immediately noticed his pallor, remarking with concern that he didn't look well. As Rise drew closer, Killian caught the mild, pleasant fragrance of violets emanating from her. Rise, innocent and pure as a wildflower, gently touched his forehead, checking if he had a fever. Killian dismissed her concern, claiming it was nothing. He then added, with a pointed look, that he was just disgusted by the pungent smell of roses, a clear jab at Edith. He grumbled internally that it must be because he had to speak with that irksome woman first thing in the morning. Rise, ever perceptive, asked if Killian had bothered Edith again. He just mentally dismissed Edith as a spy. Clenching his fist, Killian decided he didn't need to think about Edith anymore. He turned to Rise, asking if she had eaten breakfast. Anna, Edith's maid, appeared at the door, asking if my lady had called for her. Edith, a determined glint in her eye, invited Anna to go out and have some fun with her. She wistfully recalled her past life. If she felt down, a large iced coffee and a walk around town were her go-to remedies. Simpler times. Anna readily agreed, saying she would inform her grace and prepare for the excursion. Edith thanked her warmly. Edith mused that staying cooped up alone in the manor would only make her more depressed. Ever since reincarnating, she'd barely set foot outside. Just stepping off the Ludwig estate grounds, Edith already felt a weight lift from her shoulders. fresh air and freedom. Anna politely inquired where my lady would like to go. Edith, holding a parasol, admitted she wasn't quite sure. Edith confessed she was actually going to ask Anna for recommendations. She admitted, a little sheepishly, that she'd never been to the city center by herself and wondered where the best place to go was. Anna, ever practical, replied that it depended entirely on how Edith wished to spend her time. If she was looking for cute little dress shops, jewelers, and dessert cafes, Anna suggested La Belle Marie Avenue was the place to be. For more cultured pursuits like visiting the opera house or galleries, or seeing the professional district, Darcis Boulevard was the prime location. Anna also mentioned Peridot, one of the most popular bakeries in the capital, located on Darcis Boulevard. Apparently, one had to queue before it even opened to snag their famous strawberry tart. Edith, impressed by Anna's encyclopedic knowledge of the area, then posed her real question. Could they find a jeweler that would offer a decent price for gems? Anna paused thoughtfully. For jewelers, she listed Amabile, the oldest shop in town, Datria's, which opened relatively recently, and Luderpicant, a bit off the main street. Anna recommended these three establishments. Edith, depicted as an adorable chibai, could only say wow. Edith internally acknowledged that while she'd had her suspicions about Anna, the maid was proving to be a walking encyclopedia of this story's world. Definitely making things easier for the author, she mused with a touch of meta-humor. Snapping out of her thoughts when Anna addressed her, Edith decided on Darcis Boulevard. She wanted to take care of the gems she'd painstakingly removed from her old dresses. Anna confirmed the carriage was waiting. Later, Edith counted the cash from the sold gems, a satisfied smile on her face. Perfect, that checked out. She felt they got a fair price. Anna noted internally that the diamonds were small, but still the most valuable of the lot. Edith then asked if the banks were on the street. Anna confirmed they were, pointing out the biggest bank nearby. Wonderful, that's everything done. Edith cheered, arms raised in triumph. She admitted she'd been worried the banking system in this world would be drastically different. It turned out to be surprisingly easy to create an account, especially using a fake name, since this society didn't seem to use identification cards. She felt much better having her emergency funds secured outside the manor. After all, she had no idea what the future held. She could be chased out of the Rudwick Manor at any given moment. Edith turned to Anna, thanking her for her help. She apologized, realizing she'd invited Anna for fun but had only run errands. Let's go for some good food now, Edith suggested brightly, seated at an outdoor cafe. She bet Anna knew all the best restaurants around here. As she cut into her meal, Edith thought with satisfaction about her newly acquired emergency funds. Now, for the next step. Edith casually asked Anna how commoners, who don't own carriages, usually travel. She reasoned internally that she needed to gather all possible information about this world. Who knew if she'd have to flee in the middle of the night? Anna explained that they usually rent carriages or, for a fee, hitchhike a ride on the luggage train carts. Edith, as a cute chibai, expressed her surprise. Anna elaborated that passenger tickets were too expensive for most. The luggage carts, she heard, could rattle a lot and tended to be crowded something like a wagon with a roof. The train station at the south gate, Anna mentioned, led to the smaller cities. Good to know. A night at an inn, Anna continued, ranged from 3,000 to 7,000 sinas, depending on location and facilities. And if you ended up sleeping in the stable, you needed to watch out for fleas. Charming. Edith leaned on her hand, a thoughtful expression on her face. She had so many more questions, but she knew Anna would definitely file a report to the Rudwicks about their day. For now, she'd have to be content with the information she'd gathered. Anna, noticing Edith's pause, politely asked if she needed anything else. Edith beamed, assuring Anna she'd gotten everything she wanted, thanks to her. Spending the day with Anna had also significantly lifted her mood. Thank you, Anna, Edith said sincerely. I can figure out the rest on my own. Later, back in the manor library, Edith found herself reading about agriculture. This is how you differentiate between fresh and stale beans, she muttered, wondering if she could really become a farmer even if she studied everything. She'd been reading up on all sorts. Anna entered, announcing that her grace was looking for my lady. The jewelers had arrived. The jewelers, Edith echoed, a jolt running through her, her eyes widened. Is today the day? Her mind flashed back to the novel. The dreaded day Edith was publicly shamed in front of the jeweler by Rise and the Rudwicks. The narrative recalled, Jeweler Epart visited the Rudwick Manor every season. This event was the first major conflict between Edith and Rise, designed to be a cathartic triumph for Rise. In the novel, as usual, the Redwicks lavished all their attention on Rise, completely ignoring Edith. However, the novel's Rise, despite being the center of attention, would feel uncomfortable about Edith being so blatantly disregarded. At a crucial moment, Rise would intervene, stopping the selection process with a "wait a moment." Then, Rise would innocently recommend a very dainty, almost insignificant necklace for Edith, supposedly thinking it would suit her. The novel's Edith, full of pride and resentment, would scoff derisively, questioning if Rise truly believed that measly thing would suit her asterisk. She would then insult Rise's taste, implying Rise needed everyone's help to choose her own jewels, and accusing her of picking that particular item just to spite her. Rise would timidly deny it. Novel Edith would then declare the other jewels weren't bad, grandly stating she'd take everything else, except this pathetic little thing, of course. The story continued with Cliff stepping in and buying every single jewel available for Rise with a blank check. In the end, Edith was left with only the pathetic necklace Rise had originally recommended, a complete, humiliating triumph for Rise. Back in the present, Edith, determined to change the script, gently tapped an aquamarine necklace, remarking thoughtfully that it would really highlight Rise's eyes. The Duchess readily agreed that it would go well with a bright-colored dress. Edith felt a pang of awkwardness, remembering she only came because the Duchess had invited her. The Duchess then gestured towards a pearl necklace, asking about it. Jeweler Eppart chimed in, describing the pearls as more cream-colored, giving a different feel from the white pearls they got last time. He then presented a diamond necklace. Edith internally noted that usually, she would try to join in their conversation. Rise, however, looked genuinely surprised by the diamonds, exclaiming that Killian had already bought her too many jewels last time. Killian gently told Rise to just accept it. They wanted to do this for her. Edith, meanwhile, silently admitted the biggest reason she hadn't wanted to come today was because she didn't know how to face Killian again after their earlier confrontation. Looking at the opulent display of huge gems, Edith could finally understand how the original Edith in the novel must have felt so isolated and out of place. She idly wondered how much a particularly large, glittering necklace cost. Rise, noticing her gaze, called out, "Wait a moment." Rise then turned to Edith, calling her name. Edith internally panicked. Did she think I wanted that asterisk necklace? Quickly, Edith picked up a different, much simpler ruby pendant, and exclaimed with forced brightness that she thought this asterisk necklace would look great on Rise. Smooth save. Rise looked surprised. The necklace Edith held up was indeed very pretty, a delicate teardrop ruby. Even Edith's chibai form thought so. Edith gushed, "Oh, it's really pretty, is this, a ruby?" laying it on thick. Jeweler Eppart beamed, praising Edith's great eye. He confirmed it was a ruby of the finest grade, with the gold chain and bezel setting designed by their most skilled craftsmen. The Duchess then suggested Edith try it on. Edith hesitated, "Should I?" Before she could decide, Killian reached for the necklace himself. Killian, holding the ruby pendant, looked at Edith and simply instructed her to turn around. He fastened the necklace around her neck. Edith couldn't help but wonder why he had to frown like that. What had gotten into him now? Rise, observing them, surmised that Killian was only doing this for the Duchess. He couldn't stand to worry his mother, could he? Edith, now adorned with the ruby, turned back and asked Killian, a tentative smile playing on her lips, "What do you think?" Killian glanced at her, his expression unreadable, and grudgingly admitted, "It looks all right." High praise from him indeed. Edith was genuinely surprised. Killian then informed the jeweler he would take care of the payment. The jeweler, seizing the moment, remarked warmly that this was the young master's first gift to his bride. Rise, watching them, sighed dreamily about what a great husband Killian was. Cliff, not to be outdone, then declared he would buy all the rest of the jewelry for Rise. The Duchess gently chided Cliff, reminding him that if he bought everything for Rise, how would that make Edith feel? Edith quickly reassured the Duchess that it was all right. It wasn't like she wanted anything else. Rise, meanwhile, looked overwhelmed as Cliff gestured to the remaining piles of jewels. "This necklace is all I need," Edith stated firmly to the Duchess, who, after a moment, seemed to accept her words. Edith couldn't help a mischievous internal thought. How much could she get for her emergency fund if she managed to sell one of these bigger gems Cliff was showering on Rise? Ugh, the temptation. But as she touched the delicate ruby at her throat, a softer feeling emerged. But well, even if she fell into abject poverty, She didn't think she could ever bring herself to sell this asterisk. Days later, Edith was sifting through a pile of party invitations. They were still sending them, even after she'd ignored every single one. She idly wondered how many parties the original Edith had attended, probably just to spread vicious rumors about Rise. Suddenly, one particular invitation seemed to glow with an ominous heat, a fiery premonition in her mind's eye. She picked it up. It bore the unmistakable Rigelhof family seal. Her heart sank. "See here, Edith," the letter began, her father's words cold and demanding. Count Rigelhof stated he had waited long enough for her to get used to her new life. Now, it was time for her to do her part. He'd heard she'd gained access to their confidential documents by helping the Duchess. His instructions were clear. If any documents contained information about weaponry, she was to smuggle them to him. If she couldn't send the documents themselves, she could summarize the information in their correspondence. "I will wait for your confirmation," the letter concluded. The audacity of this man. Edith frowned. If her father knew she was helping with administrative tasks, that meant only one thing. He had planted a spy within the Rudwick manor. "All right then," Edith murmured with a sly, dangerous smile. "Let me write him back." She dipped her quill, beginning with a saccharine "Dearest Father." She penned a masterpiece of polite refusal, explaining the Rudwick fief was nearly impenetrable. Attacking them would mean their own destruction. Besides, the Rudwicks had done nothing wrong. The Emperor granted titles as he pleased. Why was he blaming them? Chibai Edith illustrated her points with theatrical flair. Furthermore, she wrote, His Majesty the Emperor was healthy and thriving, with the Imperial Princess by his side. Grand Duke Langston had no grounds to claim the throne. Therefore, they should abandon these treasonous plans. Instead, she proposed a brilliant alternative. Seek a partnership with the Rudwicks. Invest in the unique strengths of House Rigelhof. This, she declared, was the best course of action. The imagery shifted from a snarling wolf and snake to cute chibis shaking hands. Peak passive aggression. She signed off with a flourish. Your loving daughter, Edith, a triumphant, almost giddy smile on her face. Phew, she'd finally said everything she wanted to. After the mess she'd been dragged into trying to flee the Rigelhofs, this small act of defiance was the least consolation she could get. Of course, she didn't expect Count Rigelhof to give up so easily, but that wasn't her problem anymore. She leaned back, satisfied. But although she thought that would be the end of that, it didn't take long for her carefully crafted letter to come back and bite her in a way she could never have expected. Duke Rudwick's voice thundered in the study. You have disgraced your father and forfeited your honor. You have trodden them into the mud. His gaze was icy as he asked her again, Edith, did you leak confidential information from our house? Two stoic guards flanked the doorway. Edith, seated calmly in a plush armchair, replied steadily, I would never do such a thing. Do you swear that on your father's honor? The Duke pressed, his eyes narrowed. Edith met his gaze without flinching. I can swear on both my father's honor and my own honor. I will swear it on my life. In that case, Duke Rudwick declared, his voice heavy with condemnation, you have just disgraced your father and forfeited your honor. You have trodden them into the mud. Killian, Cliff, and Rhinon stood silently behind him, a united front of accusers. Edith leaned forward, her composure finally cracking. What are you talking about? She demanded. Duke Rudwick gestured to Rhinon, who stepped forward and presented a document to the Duke. As the Duke held it out, Edith's eyes widened in disbelief. Aren't these the documents you gave me to organize? A cruel smirk played on Duke Rudwick's lips. Yes, these were specifically prepared for you by Rhinon, with entirely false information. Rhinon stood impassively beside Edith, the picture of professional detachment. Rhinon then delivered the damning news. Your father bought up every item on this list. That is proof that he was fooled by the fake information. Edith stared, aghast. My father did what asterisk? Rhinon continued, a hint of what might have been regret in his voice. I'm sorry to say. Edith, though reeling internally, maintained a semblance of calm. But I don't see what the problem is that you're referring to, Your Grace. She argued that he must have had his reasons for giving her false documents. But whether the information was true or false, she had only done what was assigned to her. Cliff scoffed, so you're going to keep up the pretense even now? How bold of you. The Duke demanded how information only she had access to ended up in the hands of the Rigelhofs, especially since Edith adamantly stated she didn't share it. Only I had access to it. Edith questioned, a sharp edge to her voice. She pointed out the obvious flaws in his accusation. Rhinon was the original writer of those documents, and other staff used the same office space. And Mother, Rise, and I all looked at this document together, she added, her gaze sweeping over them. Duke Redwick's face darkened with anger. Are you trying to put the blame on our family and staff? Edith Rigelhof, he bit out, the name of condemnation. Edith's heart grew cold. This was just how it happened in the novel. A bitter thought surfaced. Even after the wedding, nobody ever called her Edith Redwick. *** was the one who brought me here in the first place. She then posed a pointed question. What is Rise's family name? Is she Rise Redwick? The implication that Rise wasn't a blood Redwick either hung heavy in the air, shocking the men. You are overstepping your... Duke Redwick began to roar, the false document fluttering from his enraged hand. But Edith stood her ground. She reiterated that her Grace and Rise both knew she was organizing these documents. Surely, she wasn't so foolish as to not realize she would be the first to take the blame if something like this happened. If you truly didn't trust me, she continued, her voice gaining strength as she brandished the falsified papers, you shouldn't have even given me false information. You should not have given me anything at all. She concluded, a sigh of resignation escaping her. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. Well, I guess, if I were caught smuggling information to my father, you would have a valid excuse to threaten the Rigelhof family, wouldn't you? The accusation was clear. Internally, Edith sagged. This is exhausting. The constant suspicion, the intricate traps. She had explicitly told Count Rigelhof she would never smuggle out any information. So how on earth did this document, the fake one they'd planted, end up in his hands? She felt a pang of disappointment that Rhinon had tricked her, as she'd almost considered him a friend. Yet she still didn't believe he was truly behind this, and there was no way Rise would have done it. Then could it be the spy her father had planted in the manor? But it didn't add up. If Count Rigelhof had a spy capable of obtaining such a document, he wouldn't have needed to go through the trouble of marrying her into the family. In the novel, the original Edith was the one behind everything, smuggling information to the Rigelhofs as soon as she started helping the Duchess. And in the novel, the Redwicks managed to use the false information to screw over the Rigelhofs without any repercussions. When her crimes were discovered, Edith was confined to her room as punishment, never getting another chance to be recognized as part of the Redwick family. Both the jeweler incident and this current incident, they happened just as they did in the original novel, regardless of her own actions. A chilling realization dawned. Did this mean that she was doomed to follow Edith's tragic fate in the original novel, no matter what she did? She felt herself falling, lower and lower, into a predetermined abyss. The end, she would face her death at Killian's sword. That was her grim future, according to the story. Edith quickly wiped a stray tear, steeling herself. Don't be a fool, don't cry now. She looked Duke Redwick straight in the eye. Didn't I just tell you? I swore it on my life and honor. If you are so certain I did this, she declared, her voice calm but resolute, just take my life. Killian looked utterly aghast, exclaiming, how can you say that? Cliff, ever the pragmatist, murmured to his father, perhaps it will be wise to investigate further. Killian, however, stepped forward, a strange glint in his golden eyes. But of course, we should prevent the suspect from leaving the house. Duke Redwick nodded grimly. Yes, Edith, you are under house arrest. He added, almost as an afterthought, if you are truly innocent, keep praying for the truth to be revealed. House arrest. Edith thought with a sense of grim inevitability, just like the original novel. Rhinon stood by, his expression unreadable. As Duke Redwick began to instruct their knights and Rhinon to arrest her, Killian cut him off. I can do it. Killian, wait a minute. Edith began, surprised, as he strode towards her and firmly told her, come with me. As Killian practically dragged her from the study, Edith cried out, I can't believe what you just did. Killian, yanking her along, retorted that he'd done nothing wrong, then snarled, do you think I'm joking right now? He rounded on her, his voice raw with emotion. Do you know what they called Duke Axel Redwick on the battlefield? They called him the Gallows of Zero Warning. Wow, what a nickname, Edith managed, slightly dazed. Killian pressed on, explaining his father wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone if need be, friend, foe, or captive. How can you tell him to take your life? He demanded. Edith stared at him, a sudden thought dawning. Wait, are you bothered that I told him to take my life? Killian flinched, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He quickly recovered, stating formally, what I'm saying is, if you committed a crime, you must pay the price. And if you're innocent, the truth will come to light. Edith looked at him, her voice laced with weary skepticism. Do you really think that will happen? None of you trust me, she stated flatly, turning away. So I can't trust you anymore. She wouldn't be surprised, she added bitterly, if they did whatever it took to make her the culprit. Killian looked stunned. Am I wrong? Edith challenged, gesturing around the opulent room. You're the ones who gave me the falsified document, and you're the ones who told me Count Rigelhof acted exactly according to that document. And who will be the ones to investigate and decide the verdict? Ah, yes, you again. The only thing I can do, she concluded, her voice devoid of hope, is sit here, confined to this room, and accept whatever sentence you sentence me with. Killian stood silently, his expression troubled. Our investigation will not be biased, Killian stated firmly, his gaze unwavering. I swear it on my honor, he continued, his voice resonating with conviction. I promise you a fair investigation, he repeated, as if to convince both her and himself. Our investigation will not be biased. Again the solemn vow. I swear it on my honor. I promise you a fair investigation. I will ensure you are not treated unfairly. Killian promised, his profile sharp against the light, and I will update you on the progress. Edith listened, her expression unreadable, the future stretching before her, uncertain and perilous. Edith concedes, allowing him to proceed as he wishes, but hangs heavy in the air, a clear, unspoken warning. She firmly reminds him of his solemn vow, the one where he promised to approach the matter without bias. With a challenging gaze, Edith presses further, questioning if this commitment to impartiality will truly hold if she and Rise become the primary suspects. She openly doubts his ability to see past his own leanings. Rise arrives, looking a bit startled, just as a bright, cheerful voice rings out, announcing her long-awaited presence. Princess Katrin Iberia, all smiles and enthusiastic waves, greets Rise, exclaiming how very long it's been. This is Katrin, the Emperor's younger sister by 4 years, his only immediate kin, and possessor of an infamous reputation as the most headstrong and accident-prone princess in imperial history. Chaos just seems to follow her like a well-trained, slightly destructive pet. She's often described as a whirlwind, a force of nature who prefers decisive action to mere words, and her manner of speech can sometimes make you forget she's royalty. She also rocks short hair, the only noblewoman in the kingdom daring enough to do so. Formal dresses, Katrin finds them utterly impractical. She's almost always in her riding pants, even at stuffy official events, cementing her status as the palace's unstoppable, though undeniably charming, menace. And somehow she always makes it look good. Rise offers a polite, formal bow, expressing her honor at Katrin's presence. But the princess, with a dismissive wave of her hand, brushes aside the stiffness, reminding Rise she'd specifically asked to be called by her name. Katrin leans in close, her eyes sparkling, explaining she came to welcome Rise personally since it had been a whole month. Then, with a playful glint, she teases, asking if Rise's affections for her have perhaps cooled, causing Rise to flush in surprise. It's said that Rise is the only one capable of revealing Katrin's gentler, softer side. However, the affection Katrin harbors for Rise is complicated. Killian suddenly intervenes, pulling Rise protectively towards him and chiding Katrin for making Rise uncomfortable. The unspoken tension is thick. Rise has clearly captured the attention of someone Katrin has admired for a very long time. Talk about awkward. Katrin clicks her tongue, attempting to pass off her forwardness as simple teasing. Rise, however, looks less than convinced, muttering that Katrin's jokes rarely ever sound like jokes. Katrin glances around, her gaze searching. She notes Killian's, her crush, of course, absence from Rise's side, and casually inquires about his well-being. Rise, a smug little smirk playing on her lips as Killian's arm rests possessively on her shoulder, reminds Katrin that this Killian is now a married man. He can't just abandon his wife, Edith, to go gallivanting with her. Katrin can only concede the obvious. Killian, however, can't resist a pointed interjection, a smirk of his own playing on his lips. He casts doubt on the validity of that other Killian's marriage, implying it's hardly what one would call a real union. He dismisses their marriage as just another messy affair, nothing more than political theater staged with those Rigelhof bastards. Katrin sighs, thoroughly exasperated. She guesses Killian is there to bother her brother with yet more tiresome political talk, Langston's, Rigelhof's, names she's utterly sick of. Killian confirms it, adding with a sneer that woman, Edith, has proven even more foolish than her appearance suggests, which might, ironically, make things smoother for them. Meanwhile, Edith walks through a hazy memory of a crowded place, trying to recall Rise's face. The details are fuzzy, and frankly, she decides it doesn't matter. Such trivialities hold no real interest for her now. Elsewhere in the palace, Rhinon is approached by a guard who formally informs him that His Majesty is awaiting his presence. Killian can't help but poke at Katrin, musing about an imperial princess who detests politics and the likely frustration of her brother, the Emperor. Katrin retorts that it's old news, turning the tables by declaring Killian the true menace in their circle. Katrin, clearly aiming to provoke, begins to make a sharp, cutting remark about the precarious state of the Empire, causing Rise's eyes to widen in alarm. Decisively cutting the conversation short, Katrin announces she's off to enjoy her time with her guest, Rise. She tells Killian he can leave all the boring, tedious political matters to her brother. Killian yields with a good-natured okay, adding a casual greeting for Katrin's mother. Katrin, already turning away with Rise, enthusiastically invites her to see a new horse she's just acquired. Though their interaction was brief, Killian found the implications, particularly regarding Edith, undeniably intriguing. A slight, thoughtful smile touches his lips. Later, Cliff finds Killian nursing a throbbing headache. He casually asks if Killian has shown his new wife, Edith, to her room, but Killian, clearly stressed, just wants to be left in peace. Cliff, noticing Killian's discomfort, suggests a trip to the palace might do him good. This surprises Killian, who questions the sudden need for a palace visit. Cliff throws his hands up in exasperation, demanding to know what Killian is thinking. They don't even have solid proof of Edith's guilt yet, and Killian is already planning to involve the palace. Killian smirks internally, pleased he managed to placate Cliff by claiming he was merely going to update the palace on the investigation's progress. Just then, Rhinon's voice calls for the young master, and Killian responds that he's on his way. Cliff, however, is left uneasy. He's never seen Killian react with such independent maneuvering when it came to something their father had decided. This is new. The scene shifts abruptly, a hospital room. Lee Sunhwa, Edith's past self, lies sobbing in her bed. From the next bed, a young girl, startled by the sounds, gently asks if she's sick. This is the girl who occupied the neighboring bed, Sunhwa's fellow patient, bald from treatment, but with kind eyes. The girl quietly rolls her Roman 4 stand closer, timidly apologizing if she woke Sunhwa. Sunhwa, tears still in her eyes, reassures her it's all right, admitting she often cries too. Her young friend then asks a heavy question, her voice soft. Is Sunhwa also afraid of dying? Sunhwa vehemently denies any fear, but her voice falters, betraying her true feelings. Then the words burst out of Sunhwa. She'd rather just die. Her friend stares, utterly shocked by the raw despair in her voice. Sunhwa recounts the painful truth. Her parents see her illness as a burden. Her father even called her cursed. Her brother is a donor match, but he would rather she. Her brother's selfish words from the past echo. He didn't want to do it, screaming it would hurt like hell, his own fear and discomfort taking precedence. His final, cruel words, just let her die, replay in her mind. This memory fuels her present despair, making her feel that death is indeed the preferable option. Her friend listens quietly, then offers a somber, knowing observation. Life rarely ever works out the way one wants it to. Yet despite Sunhwa's tragic circumstances, the girl confesses to a surprising pang of jealousy. Sunhwa at least has a family member who's a donor match, a chance, however unwillingly offered. The girl herself desperately wants to reach her 20th birthday. That's her earnest wish, represented by the image of a celebratory cake. She dreams of simple, ordinary things, like growing her hair out long enough to tie it back in a ponytail. She yearns to put on lipstick and eye makeup, to walk through the bustling downtown streets, simply to see how other people live their lives. Sunhwa realizes it's a dream, the same one that always comes back to her whenever she's struggling, a bittersweet reminder. In the dream, her friend cries, not from sadness, but from a desperate hope. If only she had the chance to do those things, she feels she could bear any amount of pain. Edith awakens in her grand bedroom, the poignant dream still clinging to her. She remembers her friend's profound, overwhelming fear of death. But that friend, despite her desperate will to live, had vanished without a word after Sunhwa's transplant surgery. The memory of that girl and her unfulfilled dreams became the unwavering reason Sunhwa, and now Edith, could not give up on life. Right, Edith's resolve hardens. As long as she is alive, she can figure this out. She will survive. Once she shifted her attitude, a surprising sense of peace began to settle over her. She started to find a strange sort of comfort in her new, albeit restrictive, lifestyle. Although the house arrest was technically a punishment, it offered an unexpected, almost welcome, break. The enforced solitude, the quiet time alone, was actually perfectly restful for a homebody like her. It was a vacation she didn't ask for but secretly didn't mind. At least her peace lasted until Killian, that handsome troublemaker, popped up out of the blue to join her for lunch, uninvited and unannounced. So much for restful solitude. Edith, maintaining an air of composure despite the intrusion, calmly inquires as to what brings him to her table today. He just showed up, without any warning, for a meal with her asterisk, of all things. Edith stares at him, silently demanding an explanation for this bizarre behavior. Killian's excuse is as flimsy as a wet paper napkin. He simply couldn't find any other time. Edith offers a noncommittal "ah, I see," her expression clearly telegraphing her disbelief. Internally, however, Edith is fuming. Busy, you say? She thinks with a mental eye roll, barely suppressing her irritation at his audacity. So, he's just going to be enigmatic and not give a real reason. What a complete jerk. Does he think he can do whatever he wants just because he's ridiculously handsome, and because he has a body that could make statues weep with envy? The absolute nerve of this man. Edith can't believe she's getting distracted by his looks asterisk again asterisk. She mentally apologizes to an anonymous internet commenter from her past life who swore by the benefits of hot husbands. Maybe they had a point. Shaking off the distracting thoughts of his admittedly fine features, Edith decides to focus on the food for now. This meal is far too delicious to let it go to waste just because of an uninvited, albeit distractingly attractive, guest. Taking a bite, she can't help but let out a satisfied mmm. This is genuinely delicious. Killian finally breaks his silence, informing her they are pursuing every other possible route for the document leak. And, as she had pointedly suggested earlier, he confirms Rise is now also on their list of suspects. He admits he hadn't expected her to finger Rise. However, he assures Edith he has no intention of going easy on Rise just because of who she is. Killian then raises an eyebrow, observing her hearty eating with a touch of dry amusement. It seems her appetite hasn't suffered one bit from the serious accusations. Edith meets his gaze coolly. Why would it? She's innocent and this soup is fantastic. Priorities, darling. She continues, matter-of-factly, that since she didn't do it, why shouldn't she enjoy the food? She then notes with mild disappointment that she has bread left but no more soup. Killian lets out a small sigh. To her surprise, Killian wordlessly slides his own untouched bowl of soup across the table towards her. Edith looks up, a questioning him on her lips. He explains it's an extra portion he had prepared, just in case. Edith studies him for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Internally, Edith briefly considers suggesting they share, but Killian simply tells her she can have it. With a bright then, bon appetit. She digs in, while Killian lets out another, perhaps more resigned sigh. But now that he's gone, the room suddenly feels much emptier. Edith finds herself at a loose end. What to do? It's not like she can just binge-read web novels here. The Dark Ages. She recalls a hobby from her past life, folding origami. A quiet, intricate pastime, but that art form probably doesn't exist in this world. Turning to her ever-reliable maid, Edith asks Anna about the typical hobbies enjoyed by the ladies of this era. Anna considers for a moment. Typically, she explains, ladies engage in needlework or painting. Some of the more athletic ones also enjoy horse riding. Edith freezes. Needlework is probably a fundamental skill for any noblewoman in this world. She can't afford to look like a complete beginner at her age. The scandal. And painting, she's even worse at that. Her attempt at a puppy in a past art class was infamously mistaken for an elephant. As for horses, seeing them in real life, terrifying. Definitely not her strong suit. She offers Anna a hopeful smile, asking if there might be anything a bit different, something less conventional perhaps. Anna's face lights up. Ah, now that Edith mentions it, there's a recent trend. Making wooden dolls and sewing miniature clothing for them has become quite popular. It's considered a good way to improve one's sewing skills, Anna explains, so parents generally approve of it as a suitable hobby for young ladies. Edith's mind flashes to Barbies from her old world, a luxury her family could never afford. Intrigued by this world's equivalent, she asks Anna where she can get these dolls. Anna explains that while some young ladies have their fathers craft them, one can easily find artisans who make them. A pair of fine quality dolls, she adds, cost about 50,000 Sinas. Edith marvels, Anna truly knows everything. Edith promptly hands Anna a generous 200,000 Sinas, instructing her to purchase the dolls, some fabric, and a sewing kit. She casually tells Anna to keep the rest as a tip. Anna flinches, looking flustered. She politely declines the tip, stating that serving Edith is her job. Edith, slightly suspicious, presses if they, the Ludwigs, told her not to accept money from her. Anna stammers a denial, clearly startled. Edith internally winces. Oh, she hadn't meant to make Anna nervous with that pointed question. She's known from the very beginning that Anna was instructed by the Rudwick family to spy on her. Despite that, Anna and Rhinon were the only two people in the entire household who consistently treated her with basic human decency, not with open hostility or disdain. And Anna had shown this kindness without any expectation of reward. Edith smiles gently, telling Anna that this sum is far too small to be a bribe anyway. So, Edith explains, Anna should consider it a small token of her genuine appreciation for her kindness. She gently encourages Anna to accept the money, her tone sincere and her eyes kind. Finally, with a soft, "Thank you, my lady," Anna relents and accepts the offered money. Edith's new hobby started off with enthusiasm, but it wasn't quite as straightforward as she'd hoped. This sewing business is definitely harder than it looks. She contemplates starting over, especially since Anna brought her such flawless, high-quality materials. Anna returns, much sooner than expected, and absolutely laden with supplies. Edith, surprised by the sheer volume, asks what on earth all of this is. Anna proudly presents a pair of dolls, male and female, an abundance of sewing notions, and even patterns sourced from professional dressmakers, offering to fetch more designs if needed. Edith, slightly overwhelmed by the bounty, stammers that this is more than enough, thank you. As Edith playfully tries a miniature bonnet on her own head, a small, almost imperceptible smile touches her lips. Anna, observing silently, thinks her lady seems a little kinder than before, though she still rarely smiles openly. Edith decides to approach this new hobby with a different mindset. It's just for fun. Who cares if she's terrible at it? Isn't the whole point of such leisure activities to enjoy oneself while killing time and, well, spending a bit of money? A true rich lady pastime. In fact, she muses, being bad at it makes it an even greater luxury. In her previous, frugal life, she never had the opportunity to indulge in something so purely for enjoyment, without any thought of efficiency or practical purpose. She was always relentlessly chased by the need to be efficient, to be frugal, to make every penny count. Perhaps that's why, despite being in a strange body in an unfamiliar world, she's finally, truly starting to feel like she's living as her own person. Stepping back to admire her handiwork on the doll's dress, Edith thinks it doesn't look too bad. The inner seams might be a complete disaster, but hey, you can't see those from the outside. Out of sight, out of mind. To celebrate her successful creation, she gleefully makes the two dolls share a kiss. Mission accomplished. What to do now? Edith ponders, feeling a surge of accomplishment from her little project. Maybe she'll ride this wave of confidence and actually pick up real needlework now. Her moment of quiet triumph is violently shattered as Killian bursts into the room, his face a mask of cold fury. He announces breathlessly that they've discovered a document written in her handwriting. Elsewhere, Cliff is enjoying afternoon tea with Lysna, laughing heartily as they discuss the latest developments concerning Edith. He seems to find the whole situation rather amusing. Lysna, equally entertained, wonders aloud what on earth Edith could have possibly done to warrant house arrest, especially during what was supposed to be her honeymoon. Cliff, sipping his tea, reveals the juicy gossip. Edith apparently smuggled confidential documents out of the manor. A very bold move, he concedes. He speculates she must have been under immense pressure, probably from Count Rigelhof, who is likely planning to attack the Rudwick dukedom within the year. Cliff continues his analysis, stating that Count Rigelhof always saw Edith as disposable. He wouldn't have cared about any repercussions she might face in the duke's household. He just wanted to get his hands on advantageous insider information as quickly as possible. This triggers an alarming thought for Lysna. Cliff prompts Lysna to think logically. Does she really believe Duke Rudwick would have given Edith, of all people, access to confidential documents? Lysna has to admit, no, that seems highly unlikely. Not even she would be trusted with such things. Lysna gasps. Wait, she exclaims. Then she didn't even get any real information. She just fell into their trap. Cliff confirms her deduction with a knowing nod. That's precisely it. However, Cliff admits internally that the report about Killian trying to cover for that woman Edith, has been bugging him. It doesn't quite add up with his image of his stoic brother. Lysna, ever opportunistic, eagerly suggests to her brother that if Edith is so disposable to her father, can't they just tell the Rudwicks? She wants to get rid of Edith, once and for all. Cliff advises Lysna not to worry about Edith. She'll find a way to ruin herself soon enough. He then shifts the conversation, telling Lysna that the real problem is that girl the original Rise. Now that Killian is married to Edith, the original Rise's chances of marrying him Cliff are much higher, a prospect that clearly irks Lysna. Lysna slams her hand on the table, utterly scandalized. "Are you serious?" she exclaims, her voice dripping with disdain. That girl was born a disgrace. The horrifying image of the original Rise marrying Killian and becoming Duchess Rudwick flashes through Lysna's mind. The thought is unbearable. Cliff reiterates that this is precisely why the original Rise is the real problem. If things continue like this, she'll be able to sink her claws even deeper into him Cliff. And, he adds with a pointed look at his sister, that will also completely obliterate Lysna's chances of ever marrying Killian. Double ouch. A cunning glint appears in Lysna's eyes. She voices a new idea. Why don't they use Edith Rigelhof? Cliff, intrigued by her tone, asks her to elaborate. Lysna lays out her scheme. Killian clearly fell for the original Rise. Therefore, Edith, as Killian's spurned wife, must also hate her. If they bait Edith correctly, Lysna reasons with a sly smile, "Don't you think she'll take care of Rise for us?" A sinister smile plays on Lysna's lips, her reflection caught in her teacup. They could kill two birds with one stone. How delightfully efficient. Back in Edith's room, she's startled by Killian barging in yet again, and she starts to scold him, asking if he never learned to knock before entering. But Killian, his voice tight with controlled anger, cuts her off, repeating the dire news. They discovered a document. Written in her handwriting, Killian warns her that his father will summon her soon, and demands to know how she plans to explain herself. Edith, internally sighing that she thought it was something truly urgent, coolly replies that perhaps she should congratulate the Duke for trying so very hard to frame her for something she didn't do. Killian stares at her, aghast at her brazenness. "What are you talking about?" he demands. "Do you think this is funny, or do you really have no fear of Duke Rudwick?" Edith just smiles enigmatically. She knows, with the unshakable certainty of someone who's read the script of this world, that she is far too essential to the plotline to disappear just yet. After all, in the original novel, Edith did commit the crime, but the Duke let her go. Killian clutches his head, utterly baffled by her calm, almost detached demeanor. "I can't understand you," he mutters. Edith, meanwhile, internally wonders why this handsome man is in so much anguish over this whole affair. Their tense exchange is interrupted by Rhinon's polite voice from the doorway, apologizing for the intrusion. Killian acknowledges Rhinon's presence. Rhinon then announces that His Grace, the Duke, is calling for Lady Edith. Edith studies Rhinon's face, a familiar pang of doubt returning. Does Rhinon, one of the few kind souls in this household, also believe she's guilty? As she sweeps past Killian on her way to meet the Duke, Edith can't resist a parting barb. "Cheer up, Killian," she says sweetly. "Shouldn't you be happy you finally have proof?" She then turns to Rhinon, saying, "Let's go," leaving a conflicted and frustrated Killian watching them depart. In the Duke's imposing office, he slides a document across the polished desk towards Edith. He states it's a purchase order that an arms dealer received from Count Rigelhof, and it's written in her handwriting. Edith examines the paper, her expression carefully neutral. Then, she calmly and unequivocally states that someone has forged her handwriting. Duke Rudwick, flanked by his sons Killian and Cliff, addresses Edith. He offers a seemingly magnanimous path. Given that her father, Count Rigelhof, was the one who supposedly suffered financial losses from this transaction, he won't punish Edith if she just tells the truth. Edith rises from her seat, her demeanor firm and unwavering. She informs His Grace that this is not a matter of punishment. She slams her hand decisively on the Duke's desk, her voice ringing with indignation. "Didn't I tell you," she demands, "this is about my honor." She insists they compare this document to others she has written in the past. She points out the amateurish, sloppy tables, asserting that she would never produce such shoddy work. "This document," she declares, "was clearly written by someone who doesn't understand how to organize them properly." The Duke, unmoved by her passionate defense, counters with a chilling possibility. Or, he suggests coolly, "You could have faked the sloppiness yourself." Edith scoffs at the very idea. "Why would I do that?" she retorts, If she were truly afraid of being caught, she wouldn't have used her own handwriting in the first place. The logic is impeccable if they'd only listen. Rhinon, leaning in to examine the documents more closely, observes that now that he looks closer, the handwriting doesn't actually seem to match perfectly. Edith then requests that her diary be brought for direct comparison. The Duke curtly orders Rhinon to bring it. As Rhinon confirms with a "Yes, Your Grace," Edith calmly adds that Anna will know where to find it. Looking again at the forged document, Edith notes an interesting detail. Even though the tables are poorly executed, whoever wrote this does seem to understand the basic principles behind their construction. This sparks a chilling thought. If it were the Duchess, or Rise, or indeed anyone she herself had recently taught these principles to, then this attempt to frame her would make a twisted, horrible kind of sense. But why would Duke Redwick himself go to such elaborate lengths? He didn't need to make things so complicated if he just wanted her gone. It's almost as if someone specific wants to frame her, Edith, exactly as it happened in the original novel. Rhinon returns with the diary. Edith takes it and confidently presents it, pointing out that, as they can see, her genuine handwriting is slightly different from the forgery. She specifically draws their attention to the way she writes the letter Q in her diary. It's completely different, she explains, from the Q in the so-called evidence. With undeniable proof laid out before them, Edith declares the document a carefully crafted forgery. And now, she challenges the Duke. It is his responsibility to find the rat who perpetrated this act. Just at that moment, the original Rise enters the room, her demeanor hesitant. "Your Grace," she says softly, "it's me, Rise." Killian immediately questions Rise's unexpected appearance, but the Duke interjects, stating that he was the one who summoned her. "Right on time," he remarks, inviting her to come in. The Duke turns his attention to Rise. He notes her 4 years of service assisting Jocelyn, the Duchess. Then, he gets to the point. "You said Edith taught you how to use these tables to organize information recently, right?" Rise confirms that yes, His Grace is correct. She adds that Her Grace, the Duchess, was very happy with the method and found it to be very efficient. The Duke presses further, asking who else might be aware of this particular organizational method. Rise hesitates, admitting she's not sure if Her Grace taught Baron Rhinon. Rise continues, speculating that Cliff and Killian probably have a general understanding of it, but she doesn't think anyone else knows. Then, with a touch of sheepishness, she admits that, to be frank, she didn't really understand it all that well herself. The Duke leans back, a grim understanding dawning. Then, he concludes, the only people who know how to use this method would be Edith and our family. Rise, looking rather innocent and perhaps a little out of her depth, simply agrees, yes, probably. A flicker of unease crosses Rise's face. She turns, perhaps to the Duke or Edith, and hesitantly asks if she might inquire why she is being questioned about this. Edith is inwardly puzzled. Rise didn't understand it, but Edith distinctly remembers that when she taught her last time, Rise had said something quite different. The Duke curtly dismisses Rise's question, telling her it's none of her concern. "You solved my problem," he states flatly. "You can leave now." As Rise quietly departs, Edith finds the Duke's swift conclusion and abrupt dismissal of Rise utterly perplexing. How strange, she thinks, a sense of unease settling over her. Facing the Duke directly, Edith asks if this is truly his final conclusion on the matter. Her voice is heavy, with a disappointment she doesn't try to hide. The Duke, however, remains unmoved by her clear dismay. "Are you still going to deny it?" He challenges, his gaze hard. Edith gestures again towards the documents, her frustration mounting. The tables look nothing like what she usually uses. The writing doesn't match. Even after she's shown him all this clear, irrefutable evidence, he still trusts Rise's words over hers. The injustice of it stings deeply, a fresh wave of betrayal washing over Edith. Edith racks her brain, trying to recall the exact details from the original novel, how Rise had managed to prove Edith the culprit back then. She'd always imagined that someone as supposedly honest and kind as Rise would have used some form of credible evidence, not some shoddy, poorly constructed story like this. A thought suddenly strikes her. Perhaps Rise didn't have any real evidence to use this time because Edith never actually did it in the first place. Then, a more alarming realization hits her diary. She spots Killian holding her diary and rushes towards him, aghast. "Oh my God," she exclaims, "you can't just read someone's diary." Snatching the diary back from his grasp, Edith confronts him, her voice trembling with barely suppressed anger. "None of you even have a shred of respect for me, do you? Killian starts to offer an explanation, but she cuts him off. Surprisingly, it's the Duke who interjects. He concedes that Edith has a valid point. He admits that, in truth, he doesn't have definitive evidence either way. Therefore, the Duke announces, his voice decisive, "I will close this case for now, and I rescind the house arrest order." As Edith turns to leave the office, her freedom restored but her heart heavy, Killian follows her. "I can't trust you," he says, his voice low and conflicted. Edith retorts sharply, "I know, you never trusted me and you never will." Killian looks genuinely pained by her words. "After everything that's happened with the Rigelhofs," he asks, his voice filled with a strange mix of accusation and hurt, "don't you think my suspicion is warranted?" Edith whirls back to face him, her voice laced with exasperation. "How many times do I need to tell you that I have nothing to do with what my family does?" Then, her eyes narrow. "But you did play a part in it." Killian presses his advantage. "Are you going to deny what you've done to help your father's schemes so far?" Edith starts to question him. "What are you?" confused by the sudden and aggressive shift in his accusations. In that instant, a million different scenes the original Edith's memories flash through her mind. Not only did she seduce men for information, but she also actively ruined parties of families allied with the Rudwicks. The flood of damning memories continues. She even ruined several of their engagements, all in the name of her family's ambition. The weight of the original Edith's sins crashes down upon her present self. Why now? Edith thinks in despair, her gaze fixed on Killian. After all her efforts to live differently, why is her unchosen past, the past of the villainess, coming back to haunt her with such force through his words? Killian's voice softens almost imperceptibly as he offers to escort her to her room. Edith feels utterly overwhelmed. So much has happened, all at once. Though she's no longer under house arrest, Edith can't stop her mind from replaying the events, particularly her thoughts about Rise. Suddenly, she spots Killian in the hallway and calls out, "Killian, there you are." Meanwhile, Rise, after leaving the Duke's office, is filled with a deep sense of unease. "What happened just now?" she murmurs to herself. "There's something wrong, isn't there?" Killian finds Rise and informs her that Edith was accused of smuggling confidential information. Rise is shocked, immediately connecting it to the document discussion they'd overheard. "But Edith would never do that," she exclaims, defending Edith with surprising conviction. Rise admits that's what she wants to believe and anxiously asks if there was any proof. Killian confirms that all the evidence presented was inconclusive. Edith, listening from just around the corner, hears their entire exchange. She doesn't need to eavesdrop any longer. She already knows what Killian is thinking, his internal conflict, his lingering suspicions. Rise, her brow furrowed with worry, asks Killian if her words might have inadvertently hurt Edith's case. She even considers going back to his grace to clarify whatever she knows, wanting to set things right. Killian firmly tells her there's no need for that. Rise looks surprised and starts to protest. "What, but I?" He explains that the Duke has already rested the case. "We don't need to talk about this anymore," he says, gently but decisively leading her away. "Let the past rest." "Got it," Killian tells her, his tone leaving no room for argument. Rise looks at him, a questioning Killian, on her lips, sensing a deeper, more personal meaning behind his words. Later, Killian is seen looking out, presumably at the training grounds. Overlaid is an excerpt from Edith's diary, a rather breathless entry about secretly watching Killian train that morning, complete with declarations of his glowing face, and so hot body. Teenage Edith was clearly smitten. The diary entry, penned by Edith, continues with her musings that Killian is really her type. But then, a note of melancholy. She happened to see him wave at Rise, and the smile he gave her was so dazzling she thought she might be blinded. A smile he, of course, never directs at Edith herself. Killian, having clearly read these very private entries, internally seethes with a mixture of anger and disgust. Why would I ever smile at that woman ? He thinks, referring to Edith. The diary has only managed to fuel his disdain for her. Cliff is engrossed in a book in the library when Killian's voice, sharp and challenging, cuts through the quiet. "Cliff, let's duel." Cliff looks up, his brow furrowing with concern as he takes in his brother's appearance. "My brother," he says gently, "you don't look too well." Cliff asks if his persistent headache is still bothering him. Killian, his patience clearly worn thin, curtly tells him to shut up and follow him to the training grounds. The scene shifts to the Duchess Rudwick's office. She calmly invites Edith in, acknowledging that she was waiting for her, and has heard that Edith went through a lot yesterday. Edith tries to brush off the ordeal, murmuring that it was nothing. The Duchess, however, offers a piece of gentle wisdom. Sometimes emotional burdens are harder than physical burdens. Edith's composure wavers. "Mother," she begins, then quickly corrects herself. "I mean, Your Grace, I truly never leaked any information." Her voice is earnest, pleading. She continues, her voice filled with a raw despair. "I know you won't trust me. I don't care if I am put under house arrest for longer." Edith is about to swear on her life, her voice cracking with the intensity of her plea that she never. When the Duchess gently reaches out and takes her trembling hands, Edith looks up, her eyes wide with stunned surprise, as the Duchess calmly and firmly meets her gaze and says, "I trust you." A kind, reassuring smile graces the Duchess's lips. "It must have been so hard on you," she says softly, then reiterates, "I trust you, Edith." The Duchess explains that she knows Edith tried her best to help her. "I've seen you struggling to find your place here," she says, her voice full of understanding. "How could I not know?" The Duchess continues, a wistful look in her eyes as a faint image of her younger self with a younger Duke appears. "I've been in your shoes before." The Duchess looks at Edith with genuine compassion. "I don't know who pulled this nasty prank," she says, her tone conveying her disapproval of the scheme. "But I know you're not responsible for it, my dear." As these words of absolution wash over her, tears stream down Edith's face, overwhelmed by this unexpected and profound display of trust and kindness. "Mother," Edith whispers, the words slipping out naturally this time, her voice thick with unshed tears and gratitude. "In truth, in my father's home, She seems on the verge of a significant confession. Suddenly, the moment is shattered by a servant bursting into view, shouting urgently, "Master Cliff, Master Killian." The servant's frantic news cuts through the air, interrupting Cliff and Killian, who are locked in a fierce duel on the training grounds. Lady Edith has collapsed. Killian, his sword still raised, whirls around, stunned. What are you talking about?" he demands. The servant explains breathlessly that she was speaking with her grace in the office and suddenly lost consciousness. As the servant begins to explain that the doctor is on his way, Killian's intense, hawk-like gaze shows his immediate, sharp concern and unspoken urgency. Is all he manages. The doctor, having examined Edith, stands before Killian and the Duchess. It appears she was overwhelmed by stress. He reports gravely. "Did she experience anything severely stressful recently?" "That might be the understatement of the century, Doc." The doctor assures them that once Edith awakens, she should be able to return to her daily life. But he strongly advises that she be taken good care of until she fully recovers. Killian gazes at Edith's still, unconscious form. Killian recalls Edith's surprising composure and confidence before his father during the interrogation yesterday. He then contrasts this with the information that she later cried until her eyes were swollen and red. To think that the proud and arrogant Edith Rigelhof, the woman he thought he knew, would cry until she actually fainted. It's a jarring, almost unbelievable contradiction to the image he held of her. Killian turns to his mother, the Duchess, his expression grim. "What did you discuss with her?" he asks, needing to understand what precipitated Edith's collapse. The Duchess recounts their conversation. Edith had said she knew the Duchess wouldn't believe her, but she had still passionately insisted that she never leaked any information. Killian reflects internally, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. She has been saying that all along, consistently denying any wrongdoing. The Duchess then reveals her response to Edith's desperate plea. "So I told her I believed her." Killian looks up sharply, genuinely surprised by his mother's declaration. "What?" The Duchess, her gaze steady, firmly repeats to her son, "I told her I trust her." That's when she started crying. The Duchess explains, her voice soft with empathy. "She said no one had trusted her until now. She thanked me." Killian gazes at Edith's pale, tear-streaked face. A painful realization dawns on him with the force of a physical blow. Edith must have been aching, desperately, to hear those simple words of trust from someone. Edith's earlier bitter words, "I can't trust you. I know you never trusted me and you never will," echo cruelly in his mind. A wave of profound, sickening guilt washes over him as he confronts his own harshness. But he thinks, the unspoken regret, the dawning understanding, hanging heavy and suffocating. The emotional turmoil manifests physically. Killian clutches his head as a sharp, unbearable ache pierces through him. The Duchess, alarmed by his sudden distress, exclaims, "Killian, what's wrong?" He can only manage a pained ugh. The Duchess, thoroughly concerned now, starts to instruct Anna to call the doctor again. But Killian abruptly stands, cutting her off, insisting through gritted teeth, it's nothing. He tries to downplay his condition, claiming it's just a headache and that he'll be better after a bit of rest. Just then, Rise, the original protagonist, appears in the doorway, her voice questioning Killian. Rise explains that she came by to check on Edith, but her words trail off as she takes in Killian's obviously distressed and unwell state. Killian, she says, her voice laced with genuine concern, you don't look well. Her hand is visible in the foreground, as if about to reach out to him. Killian's gaze fixes on Rise, his thoughts drifting to her lovely Rise. He imagines her hands smell like daisies, a comforting, familiar scent in his turmoil. He instinctively begins to reach for her hand, a familiar pattern ingrained in him. When she touches him with those gentle hands, this unbearable headache will, surely, subside. But just as their fingers are about to make contact, Killian abruptly yanks his hand back as if burned. I'm fine, Rise, he says curtly, startling her. The Duchess watches this strange, tense exchange silently from the background, turning away from both Rise's offered comfort and his mother's worried gaze. Killian mutters a brusque apology, stating, sorry, I need to rest, and quickly makes his exit, leaving confusion and concern in his wake. Suddenly, Edith, or rather, Lee Sunhwa, finds herself adrift in a pitch-black infinite void. Where am I? She whispers, disoriented and alone. It's pitch black. Panic begins to claw at her. Wait, did I die again? She wonders frantically. All I did was cry. Can a girl even cry without spontaneously combusting or something? A strange, luminous message materializes before her in the darkness. Edith Rigelhof cannot reveal her secret until she fulfills all three conditions. Sunhwa stares, utterly bewildered. 3 conditions. She repeats, her mind racing to comprehend the cryptic pronouncement. What does that mean? What conditions? She demands of the empty void, as an unsettling, ethereal energy begins to swirl ominously around her feet. The non-existent ground vanishes beneath her. Wait! She cries out, terror seizing her as she begins to fall helplessly through the inky blackness. Tumbling through an endless expanse of what looks like distant starlight, she shouts into the void, her voice raw with frustration. You never told me what the conditions are. Edith's eyes flutter open. Anna is leaning over her, her face etched with anxiety. My lady, Anna exclaims, relief washing over her. Are you awake? Edith looks around, dazed and confused. Anna gently informs her, my lady, you were unconscious for 2 days. What on earth? Edith murmurs, struggling to process the lost time. For 2 days. Edith thinks, a horrified realization dawning. Is it really because of what I said to the Duchess? Did my emotional outburst cause this? Edith tries to speak, to finally tell Anna the truth, to reveal her secret. Anna, the truth is, I'm not, but as she begins, a sharp electronic beep cuts through the air, and a searing pain shoots through her throat, causing her to cough violently. Erg! Anna cries out in alarm, my lady. Edith clutches her throat, quickly recovering her composure. Sorry, she says, her voice raspy, my throat's a bit sore, can you bring me some water? Anna, relieved at seemingly nothing more serious, hurries to comply, yes, my lady. Alone for a moment, Edith's thoughts drift. Did kill? She begins to wonder, perhaps about Killian's reaction or presence during her collapse, but then she cuts the thought short. No, never mind. She reflects on her very first moments in this world. When she woke up in Edith's body, she genuinely thought she was the main character of a grand reincarnation story. She believed that as long as she had a good heart and acted righteously, she could avoid her fated death, resolve all the intricate conflicts of the novel, and even become the protagonist's friend, basking in a new, happy life. She even harbored the naive hope that she might get a love story of her own, perhaps a whirlwind romance with the handsome, brooding hero. Oh, how idealistic she had been. Once she realized that such grand hopes were futile, she adjusted her expectations, deciding to aim for a quiet, comfortable life. Once she gave up on her disastrous marriage, she found she was surprisingly happy to simply live as the lady of a rich, powerful household. But despite all her plans, all her attempts to deviate, her life seemed inexorably, stubbornly tethered to the original story's script. No matter what she did, the results always followed the original, predetermined storyline. It feels as though a strange, unseen power is guiding her life, meticulously ensuring that everything proceeds exactly as planned by some cosmic scriptwriter, and the system's decree echoes in her mind. Edith Rigelhof cannot reveal her secret until she fulfills all 3 conditions. A crushing, definitive realization dawns upon her. She was mistaken from the very start. She cannot change the story. It's an immutable fate, because neither Edith Rigelhof, the original villainess, nor she, Lee Sun Hwa, the soul inhabiting her body, are the main characters of this elaborate romantic fantasy. This is not their story to rewrite or control. Edith Rigelhof is, and always was, simply the villain of this tale. Her role is not important enough, not central enough, for the novel to even bother explaining her backstory or motivations. She is a plot device. She is fated to be killed by her husband's sword. No matter her struggles, no matter her attempts to change her destiny, Edith realizes with chilling certainty, she is doomed to a tragic ending. In the dead of night, a woman named Edith, burdened by her knowledge of a novel, frantically tried to recall its disastrous upcoming events. A sudden chilling memory struck her. A grim realization dawned. With newfound resolve, she decided she couldn't just wait for doom. Time to get this over with. She walked through the grand, empty halls, the weight of espionage accusations a looming threat. Every shadow felt like an enemy. Her desperate plan led her to Killian's bedroom. She snuck in, finding him asleep, and stealing her nerves, leaned in for a kiss. This was it. Her attempt to seduce him, to change her fate, or perhaps to understand his. She knew he resented their forced marriage. Yet sometimes, he showed flickers of care, confusing her deeply. Those rare moments of kindness ignited a foolish, persistent hope within her, a hope she tried to crush. This beautiful, angelic man was her favorite character, the man she'd hopelessly fallen for. She prayed that after this, he would finally hate her as the story dictated. Only then, she thought, could she finally sort out her own tangled feelings and accept her tragic role. She leaned closer, her heart pounding. When he woke, surely disgust would fill his eyes. That's what she needed. Suddenly, a hand shot out, grabbing hers. Killian was awake, his eyes glinting. He accused her of pretending not to care all this time. His voice, a low purr, questioned if she was so overcome with lust that her facade had finally crumbled. The nerve of this guy. Flustered, Edith stammered a denial. Killian, however, simply stated that it was fine, his expression unreadable. He then challenged her, with an unnervingly seductive smile, to satisfy him, to use the seduction techniques her notorious family, the Rigelhofs, were supposedly famous for. He even mused he might get attached to her body. Well, that escalated quickly. As he pulled her closer, Edith, caught off guard by his sudden turn, hesitantly asked if he was truly all right with being with her asterisk, and not Rise, the woman he was supposed to love, the woman who now appeared in Edith's mind's eye, a painful reminder of the original story. Killian's face darkened. Did she truly not care? Was she so indifferent as to bring up Rise at a moment like this? He looked at her, a strange mix of emotions in his eyes. Even in their marriage of convenience, did she really expect nothing from him, her husband? He leaned in, his voice a breath away from her lips. Wasn't she the one who'd been so confident, crawling into his bed in the middle of the night? He took her hand, placing it firmly on his bare chest. After all her snooping and sneaking glances, he declared, now she could touch him all she wanted. Oh, the audacity. Edith's mind went blank, then a sudden, mortifying thought. Her diary. She blushed furiously, trying to stammer out an explanation that this wasn't what she intended. Trapped in his intense gaze, with his very sculpted physique right there, her excuses sounded weak even to her own ears. Killian watched her flustered state, a faint tremor running through him, and then softly asked if she was happy now. Overwhelmed and utterly confused by this turn of events, Edith could only manage a small, hesitant yes. As he leaned close, whispering near her ear, Killian found himself thinking, with a shock that jolted him, that he actually found Edith Rigelhof adorable. A jolt, a twitch of her foot as he touched it. Edith, equally bewildered by her own reactions, thought there must be something seriously wrong with her. Later, tucked under the covers, a shy but undeniable smile played on Edith's lips. They did it. They really, actually did it. The next morning, Killian, robed and looking refreshed, dismissed his servant, stating he wanted some privacy. The servant, ever discreet, promptly agreed. Turning to Edith, who looked a little worse for wear but intrigued, he gently asked how she was feeling. Before she could fully process, he scooped her into his arms. Edith let out a small yelp, protesting weakly that she could walk. He carefully placed her into a prepared bath, cautioning her to let him know if the water was too hot. Edith sank into the warmth, sighing that it was just right. Relaxing in the perfumed water, Edith recalled how she'd actually dozed off in the tub on their first, much less eventful, night. Killian, leaning against the tub with a knowing smirk, teased her, asking if she must be a huge fan of baths. Edith chuckled nervously, admitting to herself that she really had no idea what was happening anymore. This was not in the script. She had expected him to regret their night immediately. She believed he'd acted on a whim, forfeiting everything he'd saved for Rise due to her desperate seduction. But looking back, Killian never seemed like the type to fall for such an obvious ploy in the first place. Something wasn't adding up. A new thought surfaced. Perhaps he pitied her. Was this some strange form of consolation prize? Or, even more unsettling, was he trying to use her to replace Rise, now that Rise was practically entangled with Cliff? Killian's voice, surprisingly gentle, broke through her thoughts. He apologized for exhausting her, especially while she was still recovering, and advised her to take it easy. His current tenderness was a stark contrast to his cold demeanor at the wedding. She didn't know what had changed. But last night, he had held her, calling her name, and that feeling that was undeniably real. Later, dressed and still slightly dazed, Edith waved off her maid Anna's concern with a vague smile, claiming it was nothing. Her mind, however, was racing. She tried to piece it all together. After what happened last night, and then in her dream, suddenly the scene shifts. A different woman, looking strangely familiar, stares at a glowing blue interface. A mechanical voice announces, "The first condition has been fulfilled." The interface flickered, stating that due to exceptional circumstances, some of the original creator's authority had been revoked, and the first condition would now disengage. The woman wondered if this related to the 3 conditions mentioned when she first lost consciousness, though she doubted this cryptic system would give her a straight answer. She stared at the now blank screen, a sense of unease growing. What exactly was that first condition? A wave of confusion and apprehension washed over her. What did any of this mean for her, for Edith, for the story she was trapped in?